Yeah, it does. But it works.
They're drinking grog.
Concentrated.
I don't think you're too young to have that. No, no alcohol.
1983.
No alcohol.
I don't want to be part of that. This is really cool on here. We're under him.
So, as I said, it's the same as a brothel.
No. I've heard that line before.
Really?
Yeah.
Not from
So
me.
the start date and end date is the 22nd of November, is it? 23rd?
Which months are they? September, October, November.
October 24, November 24.
October to November.
What's one way? Not three.
Why don't you put pot?
Put nothing.
No.
Put 25th.
9419.
In that room they get
Code 35.
2 minutes.
No.
Put the EMS one. Huh? EMS one. Next to the one. Yeah. Loose.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor. Well, still 6 in the States, but I make it 6:59 just into early.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's a good time. It's in the evenings. Which I know that's graduate.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. We've reached the appointed commencement hour of 7 p.m. For the benefit of those who haven't been here before, we do have copies of the agenda displayed around the rear of the room where you're sitting now. I will make a few comments prior to commencing. Questions, if you need to ask any, you need to actually complete this public question sheet with your name and address, and if you're actually wanting to actually ask a question verbally, we'll attempt to answer it tonight, but make sure you've got the question completed in its entirety, and it needs to be submitted to our minute takers over there as well. We'll attempt to answer questions, of course, but I'll need to mention also that any items that you're asking about tonight, that's on the agenda, we may not be able to answer, okay? Questions have to be specific. We don't need preambles or a history of it, just fairly specific questions, ladies and gentlemen. I haven't started yet, Councillor Walsh. Okay, we now have our agendas. The membership is as listed. Do we have any apologies this evening?
No, Mr Mayor.
No, thank you. Item number 3, disclosures of conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest from councillors?
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have an indirect interest by close association in relation to a family member who owns a property within 350 metres of Minor Park, Thornbury.
And you'll be leaving for that item?
I'll be leaving.
Thank you. Any further items from councillors? If not, I'll move to the next item. Item 4, confirmation of minutes of the previous council meetings. Could I have someone move those? Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor Lee. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 5, public question time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's over to you guys now. If you have a question, I will need you to complete that form. Please stand, announce your name and your suburb where you live, and read your question out, and we'll attempt to answer it. So, Councillor Walsh. Before we do, ladies and gentlemen, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And this was, Mr Mayor, this was presented to Council in the last week from the Department of Immigration and Border Protection, recognising from the federal government who have recognised Council's commitment to citizenship service. So I'd like to give that to you, Mr.
Happy to accept it, Councillor Walsh. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. We'll now move to question time. Do we have any questions from members in the gallery? Please just raise your hand and Steve will assist with a microphone. Yes, lady over there. Thank you, Steve.
Hello, my name's Donna Gorn. I'm from 7 Bent Street. I have a couple of questions. My first question being, I'm here in development, so I'll just go through and try and explain it.
We just want questions. We just want questions.
I realise that, but I have to explain.
No. Well, the item's on tonight, so...
I exit Bent Street onto Herbert Street. I cannot see oncoming traffic due to parked cars. The only way residents from Bent Street can exit is onto Herbert Street due to the closure of Bent Street at High Street End, due to a building site at 421. What is the council going to do to make the exit onto Herbert Street safer for residents, senior citizens, community centre and everybody using Bent Street and Herbert Street? My second question is, could the council please clean up the gutters in Bent Street near the building site of 421 High Street, as I'm tired of stepping over into mud and concrete sully, which is being left from the building works. It is also running into the stormwater drains.
Thank you very much for that, Donna. Look, in relation to the oncoming traffic and turning to Herbert Street, we do have some traffic management plans in place. We may need to actually have a look at those to see if they can assist with better traffic flow, and we'll certainly take the other one on notice as well in relation to cleaning the gutters. Any further questions? Gentleman in the back row there, please. Ockie.
Chris Ellison from Preston. Can Council verify for me the correct number of retrospective variations? Is it 510 as was written to me in a written response by Council, or is it 10, which was the figure quoted in the article in the letter? And if it is 510, my question is, what message do you think this is sending to developers?
I'll take that on notice. I know we have the planning officer here. Can you assist with confirmation of that number? Thank you, Darren.
Yeah. Mr Mayor, there's confusion in terminology here. The reference to retrospective refers to when those works have already been completed, and then there's a subsequent application lodged after the work's done. Now that does happen from time to time, and well, on an average, we've reported that it's about 10 times a year that occurs. So retrospective applications, there's 10. What Mr Erlinson's referring to, the 500 or more, is amendments to planning permits. Now, they were referring to, that was in your...
Excuse me. Continue, Darren.
Yeah, amendments to planning permits are enabled statewide. It's what's provided in state legislation. And this sits around the principle that the planning scheme is a preliminary conceptual process. And what it does is it provides this mechanism of lodging an amendment to a permit to enable, if plans change as they are refined before they enter the stage of actual development. The system does provide, and this is statewide, it's not Darabin, it's statewide, it provides an opportunity for the developers to lodge an application once they've refined their plans. Now, there are procedures under the Act that talk about when notice can be provided and not provided.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Chris, what we might do is accept that request from you and provide a much more thorough, detailed reply. Thank you. Any further questions? Ockie, over in the front row, gentleman with the white T-shirt, please.
My name is Bernie Green. I live at 9 Hideaway Turn in McLeod, or a little pocket called Springthorpe. Yep. And I live on the boundary, basically. It's about a 10 foot from a fence that's just been erected there. It's a colour-on 10 foot high fence on a wildlife reserve. This fence has just been put up, and we were told at first it was only temporary, and we've tried to get into negotiations or talks with La Trobe University, and they don't want to know anything about it. They're just telling us now that that fence is there and you wear it. Well, it's terrible.
Okay, Bernie, what I understand, Councillor Greco is actually going to table a petition in relation to that matter tonight, and we'll investigate to see, where it's at and how to best address it.
Yeah. Also, what I want to say about it, it's also dangerous because it's at a 75-degree angle, so you can't see for about 60 metres either side. And there's already been a young lady cleaned up there.
Well, can you put that safety concern into your letter so we can actually... Okay, thank you, Bernie. Appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Oki, further question. Lady over here, close to your left, in the pink top, please. Yes. Can we have the... Thank you.
Hello. My name is Carmel Davies and I'm a representative of the recently formed Stott Street Concerned Residents Network, which is along the railway track down there, near the Croxton station. And in light of the ongoing concerns regarding the former Mayor's ratepayer-funded degree, we would like clarification after reading the article in last week's paper as to why the CEO approved these expenses. Part two, I'd just like to ask the second part. I'd like to ask the Mayor if and when will the Council seek reimbursement of these private education expenses? Residents are very concerned about this matter.
Thank you very much for that, Carmel. We'll provide you with a written explanation to your question. Thank you. We can get Stephen to come back, yeah. Oki, gentleman in front, I beg your pardon, with a hand up and with a striped T-shirt. Yes, you.
Hi, I'm Simon Hakem from 43 Walk Street. I just wanted to know what's being done about the graffiti epidemic. I use the word epidemic because it's all over the place. There has been plenty of talk by various councils, parties involved, Metro, VicTrack, etc., yet I've seen little action. We're new to the area, being there for 8 months, and we've spent enormous amounts of money cleaning our property. People have been on our roof, side of our house, the front of our house. I just have had no action, nothing done from council. Just want to know what's going on.
Thank you, Simon. Look, we actually do have a graffiti management plan in place where we provide assistance to local residents who have had unpleasant experience of having graffiti or tags to their properties. We do provide some assistance in relation to clean-up. If you can be more specific on the exact areas, we'll look at those sections and...
So will you look or will you not?
We'll look.
We're seeing a lot of looking and we're seeing a lot of talking.
Okay, thank you. We'll actually have a look and identify what needs to be done and how to do it. Thank you, Simon. You'll get a written response to that answer as well, okay? It'll be included in that response. Oki, gentleman in front here with the red T-shirt.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions.
Your name and address.
Sorry, yes, first time here.
That's fine, just name and
suburb. You've been guiding me through the process as well, so thank you. My name is Jack Kiriakou from 7 Ganella Crescent in Bundoora.
Yep.
And I think if I mention the word Lancaster Gate and Arundel, most of you guys might want to probably close your ears because that's how you feel at the moment. My first question is, Mayor, around the 29th of October and subsequently after that on consecutive days, Gaetano was CC'd in the email, but you directly sent an email from me asking for you to contact me and ring me or email me. You've yet to do that. Could you explain to me why?
I will give you an answer. I wasn't there at the time, Jack. Thank you. Next question.
Okay, you got me with that one?
Sensible questions, yes, sensible answers.
No, I accept that, but obviously then that will be directed to the...
Resend it to me, please. Resend it to me and I'll act on it.
Thank you very much. And the second one is, in that same emails, the CEO was also included and asked to be sent to either contact me via email or by phone, and I'm yet to receive a call or an email back. Can I please ask why?
Well, you send an email to me first thing tomorrow and I'll get a response to you. Okay, Jack?
I'd like to know why he's been ignored.
I can't answer on behalf of other people. Well, I know if you send it to me now, you get a response to it.
The CEO is right next to you. He can't answer for him.
I'm saying to you that I'll respond to it as soon as you send it to me. I don't have the content of the email. I can't respond, okay?
Okay, my next question is in relation to the development of the rubbish, grass, and the illegal burnouts that are occurring in the development area, why haven't local laws been applied to the development and put fines to the developer for the littering and the high grass in the area? And we have to, as residents, ring, and within 48 hours or even a week, we do get the grass cut, but it's only when we have to make a phone call. Why isn't the local laws doing anything about that?
Okay, thank you, Jack. Look, I'm not sure the specific areas you're referring to or streets or addresses. Happy to, if you provide us with those details, we'll certainly act on it. And one last question. There are others.
No, I do have a few supplementary questions.
I need to ask others. Our local one
yes,
says
I
a
can
couple.
just hand it over to another resident. That's fine. I can speak for them, but I can hand it over to another resident.
But Jack, there are other people who want to ask questions. We need to give them fair go.
That's
so this will be
fine.
the last one, and then we can come back to you afterwards.
I'll have a supplementary after this one. Every night since the middle of October, we've had issues of damage to property, including our own, continuous burnouts on a nightly basis, illegal fireworks and homemade bombs, and this has again been, yes, the police, don't be surprised, Mayor, the police have confirmed this information. We've had fire brigades attend fires that have been created by these hooligans, and we've had theft and loud noise to 4 o'clock in the morning. We have repeatedly contacted councillors. Councillor Gaetano Greco has done a great job in trying to get the message through to council, but unfortunately at the council level we've seen no action. So we want to know what action. There's definitely representatives here who are aware of the issues that are going on at Lancaster Gate. I would like someone to at least come up and tell us and give us some confidence that our houses and our families will be protected. Because at the moment, other than Gaetano's voice, we have nothing.
Thank you for that, Jack. Look, there's a range of issues there, and I'm sure that other authorities, like the police, have been contacted, and no doubt we'll have information that can assist us in better addressing those issues. Jack, do you mind? No. Do you mind?
No, sorry.
I'm asking you. I'm actually asking you, and I'm telling you now, I've got other questions. I'll come back to you, because our local law only says a couple of questions, and you've actually asked 4 at this stage. We can come back to you, sir, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Okay. Oki, gentleman over here, black shirt.
Hello, my name is Steve Marsh. I live at 8 Hideaway Turn. My questions relate also to the Colorbond fence. I've got 3 brief questions. Firstly, how did council allow this fence to be constructed without any form of community consultation or engagement with local residents? Secondly, what can council do to remove this fence and replace it with something more in keeping with the area? And thirdly, what can council do to help facilitate communications between local residents and La Trobe University to prevent similar issues occurring in the future?
Thanks for that, Steve. As the other gentleman mentioned over there, in relation to the issue with the fence, Councillor Greco is actually presenting a petition tonight with a comment to that petition. We're not aware of the exact nature or status of that fence. We'll certainly investigate it and see whose land it's on, what can be done, and how we can best address it. Thank you. Gentleman in front over here, grey top, Oki.
My name is Steve Ferreira. I live at 3 Ganella Crescent in Bundoora. I'm the neighbour of Jack to my right. My question is fairly specific but broad at the same time. I've got a vast concern around the safety of the residents, specifically myself and my family. Over night time there's daily activity in the street. As Jack's alluded to, there's cars, there's noise, there's vandalised. They vandalise our property, they set fire to the grass, and the building's left exposed. The developer, in my mind, in our view, hasn't done enough to secure the premises. We've been promised barricades to block off at least 7 or 8 car parks that have no parking restrictions, but yet have yet to be imposed and continuously impose a risk to the safety of the residents in Ganella and the surrounding areas. There's 4 residents in the street here today, and we feel really uncomfortable about how we feel at night, and on a nightly basis we're calling the police, an ambulance and fire brigade to attend the street. When will this be resolved? I've lived in Ganella Prison for 8 years, and for 8 years we've had nothing but headaches and trouble.
Okay, Steve, look, thanks for that, and there seems to be quite a range of issues associated with that area. We'll certainly undertake a full investigation of the issues you've mentioned and write to you, but more importantly liaise with other authorities to see what outcomes we can reach.
Yeah, so by when will we get that? Because we've raised this a number of times before. First council meeting, but we've raised this several times before.
Okay. Well, I've not been aware of many other emails circulating, but we certainly will be now that we've actually presented to us.
Are you aware of any issues at the Larundel side?
I'm not going to enter a debate with you. I've just said I will respond to them.
I'm just asking a question. Are you not aware of any issues at the Larundel side?
I know Councillor Greco is working with other councillors, but not specifically the non-ward councillors.
So you're not aware?
Not fully aware of them, no.
That's a concern.
Thank you. Gentleman front over here.
Mr Mayor, John Nugent, Epping. Mr Mayor, my question is about the new fee structure for sporting clubs. Mr Mayor, I believe that this was not Council's intention to raise the sporting club fees greater than the CPI. Some club fees have gone up greater than 400%, but with Council's 50% reduction for meeting Council criteria, this brings it down to only 130% increase. Mr Mayor, will Council fix this error and charge clubs closer to CPI this financial year and refund monies back to the clubs who have paid their fees?
Thank you, John. We'll have a look at the policy associated with some of those charges and look at the necessary calculations and write back to you with a response, and obviously have liaison with other clubs as well, those who feel as if they've been impacted. Any further questions from the gallery? Oki, lady over there, behind the gentleman in red.
My name is Banji Kili. I live next door to Jack. This is a bit concerning that you don't know the issue of Lancaster Gate. We've been there 7 years living in fear, constantly screaming at each other there. So this is a bit concerning for us paying our rates to do your job.
Can I hear your question, please?
No, that's all I have.
Thank you. I'll take that on notice. You do have board councillors. Thank you. You do have board councillors who represent you, okay? And we'll take those concerns on board and address them to the best of our ability. Thank you. Any further questions? Lady in the back there, please, Oki.
My name is Kathleen Chapman from Save Darebin Pets, and I'm a resident of Reservoir. So, as you'd be aware, Darebin has made significant progress in the past 2 years in the area of animal management. We now have a more compassionate approach towards animals, and each year around 500 animals are given the chance of rehoming via rescue groups, animals in the past who would simply have been killed by the Lost Dogs Home.
Can we have a question, please? Excuse me, no, specific question, please. We've had this preamble before.
So I understand that tonight you'll be voting on a proposal to invest in a new animal shelter. So I'd like to know, when will local residents be made aware of Council's decision on this matter? And secondly, will there be public consultation to help ensure that the new shelter, if it does go ahead, is built and run in a way that is consistent with the values of the Darebin community?
Thank you very much. As you're aware, that item is being considered tonight. It is a confidential item, and no doubt once that's decided and debated and argued with by councillors, we'll make the resolution and a report known to residents, if so that be the will of the council. At the earliest this Thursday, you'll know. By Thursday, you'll be notified. Okay. Any further questions? Gentlemen, at the front there, Oki, in the red top.
You've obviously, sorry Mayor, took me a couple of minutes to get my notes.
That's fine.
I did them in the car.
In the meantime, are there any others with questions? If not, we'll wait.
To go first.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a very difficult journey for us. What I'd like to request, which I've requested previously, Mayor, and I'd like you an answer to whether you're willing to accept this request and action it, is we've previously requested an urgent meeting with yourself, the CEO and councillors at the site to walk you through and around the area that we're referring to, and we have yet to hear anything back. I have no doubt and have complete faith that Councillor Gaetano has asked for that, but I have personally not heard back anything.
Thank you, Jack.
And I get a commitment from you that you will work with your team and organise a time where you can come up and we can walk you through.
Jack, happy to accommodate a request. Happy to accommodate a request. Those who know me, after 18 years on council, I think they know me pretty well to actually say yes to a request like that. And any other concerns, Jack, please listen. So when we can arrange a suitable time for all to come and visit and look at those issues, happy to do so. That's not a problem.
It's not a question, but I'd love you to do that. And why I'd be saying, can we do it urgently?
We'll do it as soon as practical.
No, why I'm saying that in the context of, if you looked up Triple O or spoke to Reservoir Police Station.
Jack.
Please just hear me for a minute. I haven't been here for the last 8 years. We've tried to deal with these things internally, but we've had to come here today. So please just give me a minute. Okay?
No, Jack, we've answered the question. You've actually asked the same question in a different way. I'm happy to accommodate that. That's not the issue. As I've said, I can't give an answer straight away. I'll try to be as soon as practical, maybe in a few days, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. We'll consult with the other councillors, those who are willing to come, particularly the ward councillors, and we will meet with you with respective officers. That's not the problem. Please, no.
I visited the site 10 days ago and left all my contact details. No one contacted me.
So Jack, it's okay. We will follow up, Jack. Jack.
Sorry, not Jack.
I think we've got the gist, so we'll accept that, okay? I don't want into a debate, please.
No,
you have said it already.
Why I'm saying I want it urgent, and it doesn't sound like I'm being too pragmatic, is because the last 3 weeks, every night, we have been up till 3 or 4 in the morning. That's why I'm asking for it to be urgent.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Joe.
I've only been here once, I haven't been here before, this is my first time. I do understand there's also a local media representative here tonight. Is that...
They're over there, you can speak with them afterwards.
Can we catch up after this, please, to discuss this?
Thank you. You can speak with privately. This is question time to me. Thank you. Are there any further questions from the gallery? Gentleman in the back row there. Oki.
Craig Walton.
Have you got the question written, Craig, please? Can you please submit a written question? Because sometimes there are times people ask questions and don't actually submit them.
I've never had a reply yet.
Well, we request a written, that's what it says on the form. That's what we're
Craig Walton, 33 Dean Street in Preston. The council is actually moving on the open space strategy and looking at the East Preston Primary School site and incorporating that into being public open space legally. This is moving at a great pace, and the designs and the consultation is very good. Who do I have to thank?
Your question is, who do you have to thank? We'll respond to you accordingly with the officers, the department, anyone that we feel has had a very important input to it. So thanks, Craig. Okay, any further questions? Thank you for that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our question time. You're more than welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting or leave at your leisure. And if you do so, please leave quietly so we can continue with tonight's proceedings, okay? Next item for consideration is records of assemblies of council, but Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I can table this now if
Yes.
I may. Just move a suspension of standing orders to table a petition, and I believe Councillor Greco also has a petition. So a suspension of standing orders.
Suspension of standing orders by Councillor McCarthy, second by Councillor Lee. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. If I have a seconder, I will table the petition. Thank you. The petition reads, the title of the petition has been distributed to councillors, is Create a Safe and Legal Thoroughfare for the Community. We, the residents of Westgarth, petition Darebin Council to pave and fence the informal Green Street pedestrian path. This path is regularly used by residents to access east-west along the railway line, Dennis Station and the primary school, shops, cafes and parks over the railway line. By restricting access, a long-standing amenity and important access to public transport has been significantly diminished. Formalising this path will make it the same as the other public thoroughfares at Knowles, Harper and Rathmine Streets. We urge the Darebin Council to indefinitely lease the land from PTV/VicTrack so that they can then create a safe and legal thoroughfare to Dennis Station and beyond by early 2016. They're the wording of the petition. I will move the motion that the petition be received from Council and the report be received at Council at its February meeting with any reference to the budget process to be considered at that meeting.
Please, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor McCarthy and Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to second it.
Yes, that's been done. Okay. Do we have any further petitions? Councillor Greco.
I have a petition. This is a petition by Springthorpe residents, and I thank the Springthorpe residents for being
a second for that? Councillor Lawrence.
Second that. Thank you, councillors. So I'll read out the petition. We've heard a little bit about what it is, but I'll just read out the petition for a petition for the removal of colour-bond fencing at Wildlife Sanctuary Gate Number 9. We, the undersigned, hereby petition La Trobe University to remove the colour-bond fencing at Gate Number 9. First, Gate 9 was relocated to the end of Hideaway Turn without notification, and then colour-bond fencing was erected without any consultation or community engagement by La Trobe University with Springthorpe residents. The negative effects of the erection of this colour-bond fence are numerous. And I'll just list a couple of the points. Loss of amenity, akin to buying a beachside property and being built out of a view of the sea for residents. Secondly, reduction in aesthetic appeal of the area for all residents and visitors. Thirdly, devaluation of properties adjacent to the fence. Fourthly, compromised pedestrian/cyclist safety. La Trobe claims that the fence is needed to protect wildlife from headlight sweep into the wildlife sanctuary at night. However, this claim is unsupported by empirical evidence such as night level surveys. Furthermore, no effort has been made to explore less intrusive options that meet the same intent, such as the use of natural planting. We hereby petition La Trobe University to follow a socially responsible course of action, engage with the community, undertake light-level surveys, and work with local residents to formulate a solution that meets the needs of all stakeholders. So, similar to Councillor McCarthy, I move that this petition be received and that Council receive a report in relation to this petition at our meeting in February.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greco. Councillor Lawrence, anything to add?
No, Mr Mayor. I have had contact with the resident and suggested we actually start an online petition because there's a range of high-handed negotiations that are happening between La Trobe and residents, and this is just one of them.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. If there's no further petitions, I'll move to accept.
I'll move to resume standing orders, Mr Mayor.
First of all, I need to move to accept the petitions.
Accept the petitions.
Councillor McCarthy moves. Councillor Lee seconds. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. I now ask the resumption of standing orders. Moved. Councillor McCarthy. Seconded. Councillor Williams. Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Resumption of standing orders. It is. Next item of consideration is 6.1, Assemblies of Councillors Head. We've got a mover there. Councillor Lee has moved. Councillor McCarthy. If there's no comment there, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item is our consideration of reports. 7.1, application for approval of a development plan for 200 Beavers Road, Northcote.
Happy to move that.
Moved Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy, your time starts now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to start off by acknowledging the great work of both our officers, the applicant and concerned residents in this process. This has come back to us having previously come to the Planning Committee meeting held last week, and I'd like to once again reiterate that thanks to our officers for moving with speed to get this to tonight's meeting, which avoids all parties from having to undertake other processes outside of the normal council process. What we have here is altered conditions for the proposed development plan for 200 Beavers Road, and these were subject to further consideration following the Planning Committee meeting and based on officers' recommendations for what we would hopefully consider tonight is a great way forward for this location, which of course is at a prime site in terms of not only the opportunity for appropriate and sustainable housing, but also the potential for new housing in a location which we know is very dear to people in Darebin, of course being adjacent to the Merri Creek, and also close to an industrial precinct which Council is increasingly pushing for to become a green business precinct as well. So it's appropriate that we have a development plan that moves us in that direction and certainly picks up on the importance of landscaping, attention to the creek interface, respect for that natural environment, and of course low density housing in a scale that is appropriate to that particular location. I won't go through the details also through the conditions in detail. Councillors have given this a lot of consideration at the last Planning Committee meeting. Very pleased to support the development plan, and this of course will trigger the next stages in the process regarding planning permit approvals. But there's a lot of work that's gone into this, and it's great for us to get to this stage and have very clear guidelines and conditions around how any development that occurs on that site will take place within Council's policy and of course community expectations. I think we all want to see something great happen there. It's important to get the conditions right, and I think that's what we've done here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Seconder, Councillor Greco.
Yes, Mr Mayor, just very briefly, I think Councillor McCarthy's covered it all. I just want to thank the applicant for their patience in helping us to process this properly with this extra week. So thank them very much for that, and also thank them for their suggestions, of which we have included as additional conditions in the application. Also, as Councillor McCarthy said, this is it's a transformative development in this particular area. Previously an industrial area, a fairly ugly area. If we go there and have a look, and what's been envisaged will actually completely revitalise that area with some sensitive development, given that there is it's on the banks of the creek there. So It's been a long time coming. It's been 5 years in the making, and again, I'd like to thank the applicant for waiting 1 extra week in order for this to come to council in a proper and a due process manner.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Gregor. Good things take time. Councillor Walsh, anything new to add?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I too will thank the developer, but I want to note his and I want to do this because of his genuine care for the area and his support for better for the area and
Councillor Walsh, to the application.
Yes, but particularly, obviously, he's a supporter of the Merri Creek footbridge. But this is going to, but this will be good for, the area. But I did want to note publicly the developers' support for community infrastructure. So,
thank you very much, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Lawrence?
Mr Mayor, I've just got one question. I just don't have my planning minutes from last week, so I just wanted to ask a question. Aside from the 5 amendments that were moved last week at the planning committee, is there any other changes in these conditions? I can't identify them because I don't have the other document.
I see the officer's head nodding, so there's no changes, no.
So, can I just hear that? So, aside from the 5 amendments that were rejected at the last planning meeting, are there any other, deferred rather, are there any other additions
Mr.
to
Rudd?
No, Mr Mayor, they're just those, the only changes made are in those 5 conditions, and they've been altered to fill in the reason, which is explained in the report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rudd. If there's no further comments, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Next item.
That was noted unanimously.
Yes, we'll note that as unanimous. Next item is 7.2, the Plan Melbourne Refresh submission. Councillor Lee.
Happy to.
Second, Councillor Villela. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This, as the report indicates, is a Council's further submission to the Plan Melbourne Refresh. While the focus of the refresh focused on 3 key areas, housing affordability, climate change and energy efficiency, I do note a couple of our good work that's been done at the Council has been carried through in this submission. There are a couple of issues that are close to my heart. One is the universal design and access, to allow people who are downsizing to apartments to be able to age in place, so they have to have the extra added cost of moving to a more accessible place as they get older, or if they tend to, as they get in older age, have certain forms of disabilities due to ill health. The other issue, which is dear to all of our councillors' heart, is the cumulative impact of high-density development in our neighbourhood. And I can't talk about that without noting our disappointment with the rejection of our neighbourhood residential zones by the Minister without any adequate explanation. I think that should be noted. If you refer to page 19 of the report, you see that, in fact, the northern parts of metropolitan Melbourne bears the brunt of the growth zones that are scheduled at some almost 90%, while only 10% is earmarked for neighbourhood residential zones, compared to the very generous parts of East Melbourne, which gets 36% of neighbourhood residential zones. So we do want to support our officers in making this submission, because in making this submission we are sending a signal to the state government that we do take care of our residents' concerns very seriously, particularly in the areas of cumulative impact of high-density developments, and we do need to reject some of the non-reasons given in terms of rejection of our neighbourhood residential zones, and I'm sure you'll carry that in your discussion with our Planning Minister and our local MPs. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Second, Councillor Villela.
Mr Mayor, just very quickly, I also wanted to thank and acknowledge the work that has been put into this submission from our officers. I think it's an excellent submission, because it does manage to include some of the key issues or concerns that have been discussed here in the Chamber of Planning Committees, and some of the challenges that we face. I also want to welcome the emphasis on equity the distribution of a fair and equitable development across the Melbourne metropolitan area rather than a certain regions bearing the brunt of it, and also the emphasis on the importance of improving form and the quality of medium density development. So in addition to what Councillor Lee has noted, I wish to just acknowledge that I think the submission is comprehensive and really does embody the values that we have articulated here in the planning deliberations and what we see as fair and reasonable development across Melbourne. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Galloa. Any comments from councillors? Any further comments? If not, Councillor Lawrence.
I'll just speak in opposition to the motion.
Good.
Yes, I too thank the planning officers for their input into this document, and obviously there's been very short time frame to respond to a fairly substantial refresh of Melbourne Plan Melbourne. But why I speak in opposition to this motion is that I think council has failed to take an opportunity to have a conversation around social housing and house inclusion and zoning in this process. And I note affordability is marked as one of the major areas. Of course, in Darebin we know that affordability means many more things. It means about the preservation of public housing. It means about social housing, creating new forms of housing for people who are locked out of the market. And that there's a lot more to the housing debate and the planning debate than simply a contest between established residents and developers. One of the issues here, obviously, is our own policy, housing policy, which goes to talk about targets. And our own policy talks about a local action plan of 110 new social public housing units per year to keep up with the housing waiting list. Now that figure is actually dated. It's pre-2013. It's based on figures from the previous census. I'm sad to report that that number has now doubled, because the housing waiting list in this city has doubled in 4 years of no spending by federal, state governments, and no inclusionary zoning included in current planning applications. So I will be putting in my own private submission to this. I know the timelines are also very tight, and I appreciate the council has a different view on social housing, and I have had a different view expressed here in C136 and continue to in applications.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence.
But
Your time
I
is
cannot
up.
support this while I'm putting in something different.
Thank you. Right, a reply from the mover or anyone? Sorry, Councillor.
I'll speak before the right reply.
I'm just going to speak in favour, but I'm happy to go to
No, that's okay. As Councillor Lee has actually moved, we can have more debate. I'm just conscious of how much we need on this item, but anyway, Councillor McCarthy.
Oh, look, I just wanted to keep it very, very brief, and I'll let the mover reply. I'm strongly in favour of the submission that council has made because it is relevant to the policy settings that this council has. It makes specific reference to the issues that Councillor Lawrence has picked up on, and I think that councillors would see from the report that there is a clear identification in terms of the housing challenges that we face in this city. The reality here, though, is that this is our submission to the refresh of Plan Melbourne, and we need to recognise some home truths in terms of the current policy settings, whether we like them or not, of the current state government, and where they have made some great decisions to abandon the East West Link, and it's acknowledged that that project is now removed from Plan Melbourne. But in turn, they could go further in relation to some of the issues that have been picked up by both the report and also Councillor Lawrence's response. I think it's important, though, that we have a submission that's actually going to be read, that's going to be based on our policy settings, what we know and where the opportunities to influence policy at the state level actually are, because we are not hearing, unfortunately, the positive and proactive notion of commitment to affordable and social housing in inner city areas. What we are seeing is a trend of pushing people further and further to the outskirts. Now, we have proposed and made some recommendations in here along those lines, but we've done it in such a way, and I think the officers should be commended on their submission. They've been quite effective in speaking to the evidence, and I think also trying to make sure that we have an argument which is going to be heard by the decision makers, whether we like it or not, at the state level. And Councillor Lawrence is exactly right that there is a huge waiting list. the Plan Melbourne in and of itself is not going to deliver that. Political leadership will. And I think if we want the political leadership, then we need to be speaking to our local members more and more about these issues. This submission is going to be read by department officials, and we need to influence them in a different way.
If there's no further debate or any new items to be considered, Councillor Greco, something new?
Mr. Mayor, very briefly, just it's a new item. Again, in reading this report, I particularly wanted to focus on the Principal Public and Transport Network. On page 17, in terms of our submission, makes reference to the Preston level crossing as an example, and I think, and I don't want to put in an amendment, but I think if the submission has not been put in as yet, if council officers could take into consideration of putting also front and centre the reservoir rail crossing as a prime example that combines both transport solutions together with urban development. And I think we have to use every opportunity that we get to actually put out there the reservoir crossing as an example of what it means to properly develop the city, both from a transport perspective, but also from an urban renewal perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to speak briefly, but given Councillor Greco raised a couple of things, Councillor Greco raised the reservoir and Preston grade separations. I think we should also mention the Grange Road grade separation, because that is particularly important, because we have the Amcor development, which is going to bring a whole new suburb, and we've got Melbourne's traffic is huge. It's a huge issue, but given there is a whole new suburb going to be put in with the Elphington paper mill, we really need to push for Grange Road as well. I will disagree with Councillor McCarthy's words on the East West Link. I don't think we should be celebrating the fact that the government has just paid $1 billion not to build a road.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to propose an amendment, because we've got councillors proposing words that officers should incorporate, but there's nothing that gives direction to that.
I actually think that might be another.
So if I can propose an additional words to point 2 in the motion. Sorry?
Let's hear it.
Simply, it would now read: officers submit the submission to the state government for consideration, incorporating references to grade separation projects prioritised by the City of Darebin.
Councillor Lee? Happy with that. Councillor Ann? Okay.
Yep.
That's been accepted by the mover. Okay, there's no further right of reply unfortunately as a result of that, so I'll put that to a vote now. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. I beg your pardon?
No, I was going to ask to move 7.3, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, on your feet fairly early, Councillor. 7.3. You want division? Yeah. Those in favour, please stand up. The recommendation, I name Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Williams, Councillor Cetus, Councillor Glover, Councillor Greco, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Fontana. Those against, Councillor Lawrence. Sit down, please. Next item, 7.3, adoption of the Darebin's planning scheme amendment C148. We have a mover, Councillor Cetus, second, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Cetus, 3 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, with this particular report, it's a statutory process, but it's a very important one. And with regards to Council's determination to earmark the proceeds associated with the DCP towards the multi-sport stadium to be built at John Cain. Now, if there's a lot here to be celebrated about, and certainly we expect support from the state government as part of this, and also given, as councillors would have noted, on page 27, with regards to the state government's commitment of targeting municipalities, including Darebin, for such installation of community facilities, a multi-sport stadium, particularly directed at female participation. But in its broader context, there's a note of caution here, and I think we need to stay vigilant, because isn't it fantastic to note that the funds that have been generated by the DCP, and yet this could be its last incarnation. I think that means for us, Mr. Mayor, that we need to make a submission to the state government to continue the DCP, because these are the kind of benefits that it can deliver. the substantive consideration here before us, leaving the highlight of the sports stadium to one side, is the fact that we can apply the proceeds of the DCP municipal-wide. That's the key thing here. Before we were restricted to arbitrary boundaries in close proximity to where the developments were occurring, in which the DCP funds were being accrued to council. So now we have an opportunity, courtesy of the example that's been set here, and the precedent going forward, to say, look, we will have demands on the city as our population grows over time. In this instance, we've identified Rucker, or the Rucker ward in the south, as far as the building of this facility, but what will happen over time, particularly when you look at Kazali ward, which is Preston, further north towards the Latrobe. Obviously, the demands in terms of spikes in the population going forward, I think given the available land space more to the north than it is to the south, would suggest that going forward the DCP will have more bang for its buck for our community in those areas than it will ever in the south. So I think this gives us a unique opportunity in which to actually reinforce the advantage of having the DCP. We were, if you recall, Mr Mayor, one of the only councils. There were two at the start, and then the other one chickened out and dropped out. We were the only ones in Victoria to have the DCP, and now we're seeing the benefits of it here before us in this report, Mr Mayor. And I think that we should continue through our offices in terms of making representation of the state government, that we need to continue it, because in as much as that we have to wrestle with constraints on our capital works budget and going forward, our challenge now to meet community expectations is going to be a much bigger challenge than ever. So the DCP must stay. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cetus. The second, Councillor McCarthy, do you wish to speak?
Thank you. I'd second everything that Councillor Cetus has said regarding the, I think, the strategic decision that Council has made to put the DCP funds in this direction. I just wanted to highlight for councillors, in reading this report, two things which stuck out for me, apart from where the money is going to go. One of them is that the amount of money that Council actually brought in from developer contributions was 160% greater than was forecast many years ago, and that's obviously got a lot to do with the rate of development that's occurred in parts of the city, but significantly, and this is where I think that we have a bit of learning to do in the future with these sorts of programs, and I'm glad we have got a reformed model for a DCP now in place, which is that 77% of the projects were completed. There are projects that were originally tipped to be completed that gladly didn't go ahead because they were the wrong projects in the wrong locations. So the value here with a new DCP model going forward is that we are not looking at the very small type areas, but rather larger, broader neighbourhood and suburb areas to ensure that the expenditure of funds occurs close to where development occurs. And that's an important decision, because what we don't want to do is in years to come find ourselves in a situation where we do have a big bucket of money and we haven't got a project to spend it on. But I think we were very lucky in this case, having a critical project with critical need for funding, and in this case we're talking about in the order of $6 million that's going to go towards the development of this new stadium. So I'm really pleased with the fact that this is moving to the next stage. Let's obviously keep doing the work internally in council to find the remaining funds and keep the pressure on the state government to actually contribute to this project. We've put forward money. It's money that has come from developers. Residents have worn the burden of development, but now it's time for residents to see the benefit of that development through this project.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Are there any other speakers for or against? If not, I'll put that to...
I'll be very quickly, I'm just, if I can foreshadow that at the next meeting that I will be putting forward a notice of motion demanding the state government
We'll do it then, Councillor McCarthy. We don't need to hear Councillor, I beg your pardon, Councillor Walsh. We'll do it next time. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. That's been noted unanimously. I'm going to take it there.
Happy to move to the next item, Mr Mayor.
Next item is 7.4. Can I read it out, please? Amendment GC 42 of the Local Planning Policy for Environmentally Sustainable Development. Moved Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Lawrence. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, the report's very clear. This is picking up on the piece that we were advised not to include in our MSS, which of course is the environmentally sustainable design requirements that Council has been pushing for many years through our policies, in decisions in the Planning Committee, which have then found ourselves in VCAT having to defend those decisions. And here we have thankfully, our opportunity in partnership with the City of Manningham, following 5 other councils that have already gone through this process and have received assent for their planning scheme amendments, to look at including the sustainable design requirements that we believe should be included in all future developments here in the City of Darebin. We are, through this process, endorsing the sustainable design assessment in the planning scheme process as is outlined in the report, and by virtue of that, the amendment in this case is taking us that next step towards actually having strong controls that we can enforce with every single planning permit, whether it is an individual house, multi-use apartment, but particularly those medium to large scale developments. So this is the work that should have happened years ago. It's happening now, and thankfully the collaboration of a range of councils has made it happen, particularly at the officer level. I would note that it's actually been councils that we happen to also be in partnership with the Northern Alliance for Greenhouse Action, and through the various planning reform work that we do, that this has come about. So it's once again an example of local councils working together, as we have, and in this case hopefully getting a really great outcome. And I make the point about the fact that we have received as a council raps over the knuckles in the past by VCAT for putting in place what we're hopefully now making part of our planning scheme. So once again, this is great work by our officers, but it means that we shouldn't have to have those fights at VCAT in the future in defending those sorts of conditions. And I think we need to acknowledge the hard work of our officers in doing the detail to get us where we are now. So I'd just like to thank them on that front, and hopefully Council support it.
Second to Councillor Lawrence.
I think Councillor McCarthy summed it all up. It will give us some statutory power in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. If there's no further comment from councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried and unanimously as well. Next item of consideration is 7.5, the right-of-way discontinuance to the rear of 92-94 Miller Street and adjacent to Mitchell Street, Preston. There's a recommendation there. Have someone move that, please. Anyone? Councillor Lee has moved, seconded.
I'm happy to second it.
Seconded, Councillor Villa. Councillor Lee, anything to add to it?
Yes, I've clarified this issue with officers, and Councillor is aware of the email exchange I had with officers. This is the commencement by statutory process, and as far as we've been informed, that there are no outstanding issues in relation to occupied land or competing parties expressing interest in this matter. Should be straightforward.
Thank you very much.
So it just goes ahead as per statutory process.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. If there's no further comment from councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried. Next item is 7.6, the proposed discontinuance and sale of right-of-way and reserve adjoining to 1141 May Street, 2-24 Hayward Street and 19 Leonard Street, Preston. There's a recommendation there.
I'm happy to
move. Councillor Lawrence, second Councillor Villela. Councillor Lawrence.
As noted, this is the statutory process, commencing the statutory process and following normal policy.
Okay, I'll gather that a second has nothing to add, so I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried. Next item, 7.7, the discontinuance and sale of right-of-way and sale of council land adjoining 421 to 429 High Street and 1 Ben Street, Northcote. We have a recommendation there.
I'm happy to move it, Mr.
Move, Councillor Villela. You have a seconder?
I'll second.
Second, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Villela.
Look, it's the same as the previous agenda items, Mr. Mayor. It's a statutory process, and we're basically approving that process to begin.
Thank you very much. Councillor...
So, point of order, Mr. Mayor, this is actually not approving the process to begin, it's actually completing the process.
Oh, sorry.
So just make sure councillors are on the right page, because we moved through pretty quickly.
7.7?
7.7. And I would like to propose an amendment to the move and second to consider in that case.
Let's hear the amendment, Councillor.
The amendment is a point 7, which is that that funds received from this sale of the disposal of this open space, of this land, be contributed towards traffic management works in the immediate vicinity, including Bent Street.
Mover happy with that? Councillor Villela? Yes.
I'm happy with that, especially...
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. That's been accepted by the mover and seconded too. Do you want to add anything to it or not?
Look, I just would make the point, and I have consulted with officers in relation to whether this can be done, and the advice I've received is that council can determine the proceeds from such a sale can go directly to the traffic management works as outlined in the report, and I would note that obviously that if this is successful, would probably affect point 6 in terms of the advice given to affected residents as well. So that has been the request by residents, that if there is proceeds from sale, can they be used to address the issues that these residents now face. So I just would thank the mover and seconder for accepting that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, can we hear the wording again?
Yes, we'd like to hear that again and then submit it to the minute takers, please.
Sure.
Councillor McCarthy.
So the wording is that proceeds from the sale of this, I'm just going to get the term right, from the sale of this right of way be dedicated to traffic management works in Bent Street adjacent to the property.
And nearby? No.
So into Bent Street and
nearby.
And nearby. So the idea is that they, and I'm happy to take advice from officers if there's words that need to be more specific.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
We'll lodge that with the minute takers to be included as part of the recommendation. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried. Next item is 7.8, the discontinuance of right-of-way adjoining 1 Bowers Street and 185 Westgarth Street, Northcote. Recommendation.
I'm not going to move the recommendation. I just wanted to ask for advice from officers regarding what the status is of an email that councillors have just received.
Mr. Dev.
Yeah, could I get Mr. Hamilton to discuss the status of this now at the moment?
In relation to an adverse possession claim that we've received. Yep.
Through Mr. Mayor, so as Councillor McCarthy pointed out, we understand the claim underway for adverse possession. The recommendation in front of Council to consider tonight effectively puts a stop to that process proceeding in terms of the council taking titles of the land, which secures the asset in council's name.
Okay. Is that clear?
I'll move the motion.
Moved, Councillor Lawrence. Do we have a seconder for the recommendation? Seconder, Councillor Cetus. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Notwithstanding actions of other parties, this is the best way for council to go forward in terms of sorting this out and then going through the process.
Okay. Seconder, anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly, it's always problematic when at the last hour you receive what is an attempt to try and injunct the process of the council. I can't recall a circumstance in which such action has been taken, and it strikes me that they didn't need to come here. They could have done this independently of the council. Could have gone to the land titles office without reference to us. That's what's forgotten in these sorts of circumstances, and it's almost like the regret of the person concerned that they did involve the council in the first place. It's not the first time that we've witnessed these occurrences, but if they knew their rights to begin with, they could have gone down there and whacked in an application for adverse possession, as so was claimed in the tenor of the letter that was emailed to all of us. But I'm not sure. I think Councillor Lawrence has got it on this, pretty much succinctly in terms of where we are. These are negotiating points. If, for instance, a letter whose authority we are to accept, and I note the authorship with a sense of irony. I would have thought perhaps there might have been a conflict of interest there with Mr. Mayor in terms of the receipt, because the name of the author is familiar to us. But leaving that to one side, because I do digress, because I'm certain the Lawyer Christian has acted for us in the past as a council, Councillor Lawrence. Okay. Yes. So I had a bit of a chuckle when I read the name.
It's another person.
Okay. Well, namesake. Okay. Fair enough, Mr. Mayor. I stand corrected. But the point is, it remains that at this point in time, we're in negotiations. If this is council, effectively by tonight's resolution, stepping up to the mark to negotiate, then of course let's engage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lee?
Just a question. I did ask for it, but in the interest of public information, I just want to reiterate the question. So the question really is to officers, by us proceeding down this path, does the claimant still have a course of action to pursue? In other words, should we deny them that, does not deter them from pursuing other courses of natural justice? I just want to make sure that's the case.
Mr. Dev.
Mr. Dev.
Yeah, the question, you see, as soon as the council approves this, we will put an interest in the property. That will hold it temporarily. And then up to the legal people to sort out the following. Can you add that?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So the process that the claimant's name will continue. It just protects the asset in council's name until such time that process continues. But it's still got to be tested in that proper channel.
Okay, thanks for that.
Just a question in relation to timeframes then. Do we have any indication as to when the other matter that we've been written to would be likely to be resolved? Is there a standard time frame for these things to be heard?
Yeah. Can you answer that?
Mr. Hamilton.
I have to check the exact dates.
It's the timing one's awkward one, yeah. Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried.
I'll just call a division on that.
Yes, so those in favour, please stand up. Those in favour of the recommendation, I name Councillor Galella, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Cedars, Councillor Williams, Councillor Lee. Those against, Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco.
Mr Mayor, with your indulgence, I'd like to move 7.9.
7.9 is moved by Councillor Cedars, Park and Robert Street, Northcote. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Second, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Cedars.
Very briefly, and it is a brief report, I will declare that even though my corner is Robert Street, I don't live anywhere near the vicinity of this part of Robert Street, and people know that this part of Robert Street is actually going towards Westgarth Primary School. I'm back towards High Street, so I'm happy to move this. It's pretty standard, there's nothing major there, but it is typical of the area, in and as much as that a lot of the old streets, you're getting a lot of people who are actually getting pinged for being within 9 metres of the curb. I don't know how you address that. They may, I know Councillor Lawrence is having a bit of a chuckle. If we were more assiduous in terms of our bylaws officers, I can assure you, Mr Mayor, you don't need to direct them too far from Brook Street, right at the corner of Mason Street. The people trying to do a right-hand turn, such as yours, truly to get to a council meeting, have to negotiate such hazards as a car flush between Brook Street and Mason Street.
Thank you, Councillor Cedars. Councillor McCarthy, anything further to add?
I suppose I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't found a resolution to this, because this arose from an item that I raised after a resident who had previously been fined by council and had been advised he shouldn't have been fined by council, and the fine was withdrawn. 3 years later was fined by council for parking in exactly the same spot. So, and in fact, on the previous occasion, the sign was put in, he was fined on the same day. There was a procedural issue there, the sign was then removed. So there is some history to this. In this case, he has in fact paid the fine, and I hope now is not parking in that spot and therefore not receiving any more fines. The issue here, though, and the resident in question, I think, had a reasonable case towards council, is that he'd been parking in that same spot, I believe, for about 20 years. So we have practices and habits which may not be in line with our traffic management rules, but which have been accepted. And I think we need to be very cautious when we start applying rules for the first time that affect people without any due notice or due care. So that's my concern in relation to this, but I'm sure that there's been internal consideration as to how we don't do this again.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. If there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Next item is 7.10, the review of the Darebin Transport Strategy. Move Councillor Lee, second Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This review came about as a result of our regular review of strategies, but also with our new recently adopted municipal strategic statement, which came into effect since the approval by the Minister. What this review of the strategy does, it gives a snapshot of where we are with various policies that we have in place, such as the cycling strategy, our transport advocacy strategies, and the green travel plans as required under our planning scheme. It's pleasing to see that there are many strategies and policies that are progressing well and going well and on track, and I congratulate officers on that, particularly in relation to the issues of lobbying for public transport and also the cycling infrastructure and pedestrian, and the development of the principal pedestrian networks, which will come to before the chamber in early next year. So we're on the right track in terms of promoting public transport and other forms of mixed mode transport, but also decreasing our reliance on cars. And there are some references in the report about the reduction in private car usage and how that's having a positive impact on the transport modes of all residents in Darebin. So I welcome this review, and it is for noting, and I'm sure as time goes on, Council will be kept in touch with the development and updating us on the achievement of those various policies as they occur.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy, a second, anything to add?
Thank you. Yes, I asked through a previous motion for this review to occur, and I'm really pleased, as Councillor Lee's pointed out, that we have updated what is a major piece. It's a 20-year strategy which was adopted in 2007 when only a couple of current councillors were actually on the council at the time. But of course things change, and significantly we now have, as Councillor Lees pointed out, a whole range of new policies that are very specific. What I would like to just point out is one of the big changes that's occurred since then is that we have adopted a policy position of encouraging cycling as our preferred local form of transport, so encouraging more people to get on the bike rather than when they can, rather than getting in the car. And of course, we've had a much stronger emphasis on the benefits of grade separation to the city's transport nodes, and I think that's one of the key things that's come through in the last 4 years and the last 3 years. That has been a major theme of this city, and something which we've managed to get state government support on. While we haven't seen the fruits of that yet, it's certainly important that that's reflected in our strategy. So once again, this is a really important update. It sets us up perfectly for the new council that will come into play post next year. They will have an up-to-date transport strategy, and of course not just the terms and points, but also the targets that we're pushing towards are more realistic in terms of the current state of play. So I support what's been proposed, and hopefully Council supports it.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Any further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too welcome this document and this review. I just want to sort of draw Councillor's attention to one particular point that actually caught my attention. It's on page 67, and it looks at some of the targets, and it looks at the accident rates in the city of Darebin compared to the Melbourne metropolitan area. And I was just a bit concerned that the accident rates in the city of Darebin have gone down by 10% between 2007 and 2013. But the rate of reduction for the metropolitan Melbourne was 13% for the same period. So that raises an issue, a little bit of an issue for us in the sense that that's why such a policy is so important, that we need to line up all the various strategies to ultimately reduce the amount of crashes here within the city of Darebin. And I think that's utmost importance, and we also get that information from our yearly surveys that we have with our community, that traffic management is their number one issue. And this is sort of the spiky end of traffic management in the sense of crashes. So I'm hoping that through the adoption of this review and implementing some of the suggestions that are here, that we're able to at least keep pace. And I think we should at least keep pace with the Melbourne metropolitan area in terms of how many crashes are in the city of Darebin, and hopefully actually improve on that. And I'm pretty confident that the policy, because it's well articulated, that we will arrive there. But I'm hoping that the officers will pay particular attention to this issue, so that because we need to increase community safety in our city from a crashes perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried. Next item is 7.11, the terms of reference for Councillor Portfolio for the status of women and preventing violence against women. Councillor Villela?
Yeah, I have an alternative recommendation.
Can we hear it, please?
Yep. Is it on the board? I did send it through today. No?
Did you send it to the officers or just council?
I sent it to officers. I will bring it up on my iPad, if you just bear with me. Yes, okay. Would you like me to read it out? It is a bit lengthy, but I will read it out. I propose to replace the recommendation as written with the following. The Council officers prepare a report in consultation with the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee, exploring ways in which the committee members can be offered training and capacity building skills and knowledge to increase their understanding of the causes of violence against women in the community. The report may be based on the grassroots activism model, empowering committee members to engage in civic participation, decision-making and advocacy in the area of the prevention of violence against women, which is a key objective of the committee.
So that's your recommendation?
That's my recommendation.
Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Second, Councillor Greco.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Councillor
Just a point of order,
Lyons.
Mr Mayor. We have a motion here from a report that was, well, I have to say, demanded by some people. And the deletion of the substantive point is not an amendment. It's
an alternative recommendation.
This is actually an
recommendation.
I didn't say there was an amendment, Councillor.
It was a complete alternative recommendation. It is a complete alternative.
Place.
I'm happy to accept the alternative recommendation,
Thank you,
and
thank
we'll have
you.
debate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the debate. I think it's an important issue that is that needs more debate. My concern with the whole concept of a portfolio for councillors, Mr. Mayor, lies at the base of my alternative motion. I did say in the chamber, Mr. Mayor, from the very beginning that there were serious concerns, I think procedural concerns, with the way that the notice of motion was put to council. I think the concept of a councillor portfolio warranted a report to look at different models. I didn't think that a notice of motion was appropriate. And I did question in the chamber, Mr. Mayor, why in fact we did proceed with the notice of motion and not a debate. I have a concern with the whole notion of councillors having portfolios. In the report, it does seek to invest resources into a particular councillor for training, capacity building in the role of an advocate for prevention of violence against women.
Councillor, Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Walsh, please. We pay some respect to the Speaker.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor. I think there's nothing stopping councillors now, Mr. Mayor, from seeking professional development and specific training in this important area. I think it's more important to empower the Women's Committee and have a more grassroots approach to the whole notion of advocacy around prevention of violence against women. I do think that we set a very dangerous precedent, Mr. Mayor, when you have one particular councillor who has a portfolio. It hasn't been discussed in the chamber. We didn't get a report, and I think it puts some councillor to an unfair advantage, especially coming up to election year. I question the way it was done, and I think if we are true to our policies and the role of the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee and our endorsement of the Victorian Local Government Women's Charter, we will be seeking to invest resources in empowering the women who run our Women's Committee to participate, civic participation and decision making in our community and in advocating. I think the women would welcome to have feedback in a report to look at other models where the focus is on the community and grassroots empowerment and not individual councillors. Because we can do that anyway, Mr. Mayor, if we wish, and we have a dedicated council officer who is the expert and the main driver behind this. Also, I think there are governance issues that haven't been fully explored as to what role does this particular portfolio have in advising council, and where is the demarcation between councillor and advisor? So I think this calls for a different approach and a report to look at that model.
Second, I wish to add anything to that?
Yeah,
Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Lella's covered off on some of the main points, and it was quite instructive to hear Councillor Lella mention different models in relation to how we can actually further this issue of the issues of preventing violence against women. Look, I've been a community activist for 30 years or more, and I know the importance of actually empowering the community and using council. And I've always been an advocate of council being an enabler in relation to the community, rather than council taking it always upon itself to be to spearhead things. That doesn't mean that council doesn't have a role. I think council does have a role, and I think on an issue like this, which has gained quite some prominence, particularly to Rose Batty and her enormous efforts this year, is that I think we should have a whole of council approach in relation to this particular issue, and rather than investing in one or a councillor is perhaps not the way to go. And I think that we need to disseminate the responsibility. We have a natural committee that can do that has been talking about these types of issues, which is the Women's Committee. And I think that there would be a great opportunity for the Women's Committee to actually partake in some of that awareness raising and also training in order to prompt the council to be more decisive on this matter. And finally, I'll say, Mr. Mayor, just in relation to portfolios, this is the first time that this council has actually embarked on a portfolio. We've put the cart before the horse, in a sense, because we've jumped to a portfolio situation. Then we had to backtrack to develop.
Thank you, Councillor Gregory.
And in order to do that, so
thank you.
I support Councillor Williams' motion.
Any further speakers?
Can I speak again?
Speaking against, Councillor Williams.
Look, this is the first portfolio for the status for women and prevention of domestic violence. Based on the officer's recommendation, it's important to have a term of reference which focuses on the key elements, which was to increase understanding and the causes of violence, opportunities, and to promote women's equality and prevent violence against women. Support and advocate for women's full and equal participation and freedom from violence. With the consultation of the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee, Preventing Violence Against Women Officer, Diversity Policy Officer, Coordinator, Community Wellbeing, and the Coordinator Equity and Diversity. The terms of reference can be changed at any time, so this is not in concrete. Instead, this amendment is actually offering training to the DWAC, which is the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee. It is actually, it's members to actually train them to increase their understanding of the causes of violence towards women. It is not our role as councillors to make recommendations or suggestions that committee members should take up further training. Usually a recommendation will come to council from committees, and council cannot attempt to influence or change a committee and make such recommendations. It's not our place to do such a thing. And portfolio, in other councils, they have portfolios. It might be new to us, but it's certainly not new to other municipalities.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor McCarthy?
Just going to propose an amendment to the mover and seconder, which was that the motion on the screen would be point 1, and to include point 2, which is refer the proposed terms of reference to the Women's Advisory Committee for input with the report to come back to Council following receipt of feedback.
Is the mover and second happy with that?
Can you just explain?
I'll read it again. So point 1, that would be point 1. Point 2 would be refer the proposed terms of reference, being the item in the report, the substantive matter, to the Women's Advisory Committee for input, with the report to come back to the next following council meeting. I've got the words here.
Mover and seconder.
But the terms of can I ask a question to the
officer, to
the councillor who's proposing, to Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McCarthy, that's assuming that the terms of you're suggesting therefore that the portfolio continues.
Well, the substantive motion doesn't withdraw the portfolio.
No, it doesn't. The position still stays. As in the top of page 7, that still stands.
Yes, right.
That's it.
I'm just proposing a middle.
Yes, okay.
Let's put it up on the screen so we can all see what it is.
I'm happy with that actually because it provides a holistic approach.
Sex is blocking.
Councillor Long, thank you. That's it? Mover and second happy with that?
You're happy with that?
So point 1 as the alternative recommendation by Councillor Villela, and an amendment to that item, condition 2.
Okay. Councillor McCarthy, you want to speak to it?
Oh, look, I just I take Councillor Villola's point about the importance of grassroots participation. I'm not clear on. I wasn't at the meeting when this matter was debated, so I'm not clear on what the arguments were advanced in favour and against. But I would note that from the report, this hasn't gone to the Women's Advisory Committee, and I would like to feel confident that there has been a meeting where they've been able to consider this. I understand it's been forwarded to them via email, but for me that's not consultation. I'm a big believer in any opportunity we can to elevate these issues. I'm also, though, concerned when we put the prevention of family violence and issues around the status of women into the same basket, because despite what's happened at the state level, which is a ministerial model, we don't have a ministerial model here. What we do have is an opportunity, and I think my concern here with the issue of prevention of violence against women and I think the prevention of family violence, which is the state term, is that it's an issue that requires whole of organisation responses, whole of council responses. Every councillor, or every male councillor on this council took the White Ribbon Oath a couple of years ago now to become White Ribbon ambassadors. I do not want to see men on this council stop talking about the prevention of violence as an issue, because it is important that they stay engaged. It is important that this is not just an issue that is relegated to an issue that's only that women have to deal with. The prevention of violence is an issue that the whole community, being business, community groups, sports clubs, churches, civic, everyone, residents, you name it, traders, all have a role to play in making a difference. So I'm just concerned about what we're doing with that issue, and I would like to think that we are taking the advice of our officers in terms, and our committee in response to that. So I'm not opposing the portfolio position in and of itself, but I am concerned about putting these things in together in the way that they have been, and I would certainly like to know that the Women's Advisory Committee has had a say on this before a majority of council of men are making the decision on something like this. I think there's a gender issue there.
Okay. Any further speakers? Any other wishing to make any comments? Councillor Lawrence?
Just a question through you to the officers, because obviously I understand a strong opposition to this concept, but what's going on with the consultation? The statement was it hasn't been consulted with the Darabin Women's Committee.
Ask a question to Ms Knox.
Yeah, thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor McCarthy is right. The consultation has been through email. The terms of reference have been sent to the members of the Darabin Women's Advisory Committee in November, and have followed the email, and we haven't received feedback at this time from either of those emails.
Thank you, Ms Knox. That answers your question, Councillor Lawrence.
Just a supplementary question then. Then the referrals that we're talking about now in terms of consultation, when will that then come back to council? How many months delay was it?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Engineering.
Next meeting of the Darabin Women's Advisory Committee is March 2016.
Okay. Okay, any further comments? No further speakers? Councillor Walsh.
Could I propose an amendment, and that I'm happy with the.
Let's hear the amendment, Councillor Walsh.
I'm happy to accept everything that it's called the status of women and preventing family violence rather than violence against women.
What's the amendment, Councillor Walsh?
That we call the portfolio the prevention of family violence rather than violence against women, because violence is violence.
If you note on page 73, the initial meeting October 5th actually mentions that comment.
Can I just point of order? The point 2 would require this to come back to council, which is an opportunity to consider both the officer's recommendation, which is actually the prevention of violence against women term, and any other changes that councillors wish to make based on the advice of our own advisory group. So perhaps Councillor Walsh might like to hold on until it comes back if this is successful.
It's in the original motion, Councillor McCarthy, on the top of page 73. Okay, if there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the attorney recommendation, please raise your hands. Those against, that item is lost.
Sorry, was that, can we just call that again?
All those in favour of the alternative recommendation, please raise your hands. I beg your pardon?
Actually, I'm abstaining.
I'll ask the question again. Please listen to the comment. All those in favour of the alternative recommendation proposed by Councillor Villoa, please raise your hands. Those against? Is that hand raised, Councillor Walsh? Yeah. Thank you. The vote is 4-5. That alternative recommendation is lost. Do we have an alternative recommendation? Councillor Lawrence.
I'll move the printed... I was going to... yeah.
Councillor Lawrence.
Question?
Question? No.
I was just going to move the printed recommendation.
Moved.
Mr Mayor, I'll
Councillor Williams said second. Councillor Williams. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll just speak to this briefly. Obviously, this was raised by a number of councillors about the terms of reference, and this is a change for the city in terms of having a portfolio. And the terms of reference have come back as requested. There's been an alternative recommendation moved, but in some ways, to me it looked, I saw it on the phone and I thought it was actually an amendment, but it looked like a supplementary thing, which was in terms of addressing grassroots development amongst our committee. So I don't see the two as mutually exclusive, but I do see that we need to deal with the business of this, which is to put in the terms of reference. And I was a little bit concerned about delay till the 26th of March because this does allow, terms of reference and the committee structure itself does allow ongoing consultation, and I'm sure if there is issues in terms of the terms of reference in March, we can consider them as they come back from the committee. I mean, it's not a one-way conversation that we have with our committees, it's a constant dynamic two-way conversation we have with all our committees. So, but I do think by having no terms of reference for several months, we're effectively putting the position on ice.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Second to Councillor Williams. Anything to add?
I'm going to speak.
Speak for or against Councillor Walsh?
Look, I'm speaking for, but it's a it's reluctantly. I don't have a problem with the thing of a councillor for the status of women, and I would support Councillor Williams doing that, and I congratulate her on...
Councillor Walsh, can you speak to the actual recommendation?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Obviously, given this is a tough issue, and I do want to say that 28% of violence cases are violence against males, and that's at least 28. That's at least 28%, and people do not recognise this. Obviously, this has been an issue in the past couple of weeks at the state level, and given one of my best friends is a member for Burwood, it's obviously it's obviously a different issue for me.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Any further speakers? Councillor Lee.
I'd like to speak in favour of abstaining from the vote. I'll be abstaining from the vote, and if that's allowed, I'll be speaking to the abstention motion. I don't know if that allows under our local laws. Yes.
Up to you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Look, I do congratulate officers on producing a very comprehensive report. It goes to the heart of the matter of family violence and the office and the status of women. So, with all those issues aside, there are 4 key issues that concerns me by which the process. I'm not talking about portfolio. I'm not talking about the person. I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about the process by which this matters before this council. And I see 4 issues. First, there are no portfolios amongst other areas of this council. This council, when we first were elected, the issue of portfolios were discussed, and I remember giving very specific feedback at that point in time, saying, I don't want to see that happen, because as elected councillors, we have responsibility for the whole of community. And by elevating one particular portfolio over and above others create division or have the potential to create division amongst councillors. Issue number 2, as Councillor Vellala said just a minute ago, councillors can access professional development right now. A number of our councillors have accessed professional development, and I'm sure the local press has picked up on the expenses claims that we have lodged as a result of the professional development. The issue is the council is already supporting each and every one of us doing our professional development. Number 3, both the Municipal Association and the VLGA are currently encouraging women to participate in local government at a grassroots level. And I think that's the key. It is not about how do we prevent something, it's how do you encourage people, how do you encourage prevention of family violence, how do you encourage that. Number 4, this happens outside of the statutory process. I'm very concerned about that. We have a statutory process where we elect mayors, we will actually elect all the councillors in there. On those 4 grounds, I'll be abstaining.
Thank you. Okay. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation as printed? Those against? Okay. Note 2 and 2 abstain. Okay, I'll now note that recommendation has been moved.
But do you want to do the abstaining as well?
To abstain. To abstain. But it's, unless you want to mention clearly, it doesn't really matter. Okay, next item for consideration is 7.12, the Darebin Community Monument for Ray Bradbury.
I'll move that with an amendment.
Can we see that on the screen, saying it's come at very late notice?
So I could already flag one of the amendments is that to delete point number 4 in the motion and to include some extra wording, a replacement of point number 3. So I'll allow that to go on. I'll read it, sorry. Okay, so
We've got, hang on, I've got a second.
I'm happy to second it, Mr.
Councillor Greco moved, Councillor Vellala seconds it.
I'll read it out first before calling for a second. Point number 1 stays as it is. Point number 2 stays as it is. Point number 3 will be replaced with the following wording. Note the broad community consultation process and positive feedback received to date in support of the monument, notwithstanding the concerns of a minority with the use of the word genocide, then deleting point number 4 and then continuing on with point number 5.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. You've got a second already with Councillor Vellala. I'll leave it to you to speak to it now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we're all fairly aware of the history of this project.
So, could we have the words on screen?
Words on screen, please, in relation to that item, point 4. Let's wait for it to go on screen so we can all see it.
Councillor Dever is on screen now. Councillor Greco, you have moved it. Councillor Gala has seconded. Do you wish to speak to it now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, just very quickly, I think councillors are pretty conversant with this particular agenda item, and I just want to quickly take a few seconds first to just go quickly through the history. In August the 3rd, we had a resolution that acknowledged the request, actually acknowledged the request to have a monument at the Bradman Gardens, and then on September the 7th, we actually, council supported DEC's request for the community monument, but it was based on also that request was also in that motion was said that the wording needed to be approved by council. The wording now has come to council, and as you can see there in the appendix, the wording is stated there. Just before I get on to the wording, also there was an extensive community consultation that took place. 874 letters went out to the community within 500 metres of the vicinity of the Bradman Gardens, and there were only 6 responses, and there was no response whatsoever against the monument. There are actually related issues in relation to the upkeep of the gardens and things like that, but generally there was no objection from our residents that were communicated to in relation to the monument. There was a minority in our community that objected to the word genocide, and now this comes to the question of the wording of the monument and the actual significance of the monument. And the monument, right from the outset, when we were informed about the monument, council was informed about the monument was about in honour of victims of genocide and genocidal acts. Now, these words are not created words. These words actually come from the United Nations. And the United Nations has had 2 resolutions in relation to genocide and acts of genocide. So if you read Appendix A, it's actually an extraction of the words that have come from the United Nations resolution. So there's no adding or subtracting to this. And also the notion of the monument is actually to commemorate the very victims of genocide. So that's why I'm moving this motion in order for us to allow this monument to be erected here in the city of Darebin, given that we are a multicultural and intercultural city, and I think it's quite fitting, and it fits in with the values of inclusion in our city. So I commend the work that DEC has done, and a lot of this work that DEC has done, and I think it needs to be pointed out because I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding.
Thank you, Councillor Greco.
And I'll just terminate on this. There was a bit of a misunderstanding that DEC has actually sought out donations for this monument. So the money is actually coming from community members to allow this monument to be erected.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Second, I wish to add anything to that?
Yes, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the word genocide, I did do a thesaurus search today to see if there was anything else that could substitute it, and the reality is there isn't. It is what it is, and I think we can't weaken it. It can't be weakened. The meaning is the meaning, and that's why it's been enshrined in a UN convention. So I think there has been a broad community consultation. There is the loud minority, and therefore, you know, it's the silent kind of supporting majority that we often have to focus on, because a number of groups can dominate the discourse, if you like. So I think genocide, the term genocide, should stay, because the meaning is quite critical to the actual symbolism and significance of the monument itself. I'm satisfied with the community consultation. Yes, there's some groups who would like for it not to exist. They have their right to that opinion, and we respect that. But we have to look at the overwhelming majority view, and I think it's fair to say that the support is totally in favour of a monument with the original with the original word inscribed, genocide. It ticks all the boxes. It's a UN initiative. But I also like to acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, that we do have a diverse community. Yeah, and I think the support for it reflects the different groups in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lola.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further speakers for or against? Councillor Lawrence.
Just a question.
Question.
Yeah, just my first question, just through the chair, is I note the words that have been debated are genocide and genocide acts, but the UN Day of the Name talks about victims of the crime of genocide. I'm just wondering why Beck looked at that variation.
I'm not sure how we can answer that one. Councillor Lawrence.
Well, just that it's different to the actual UN resolution than Dave. So, was there a rationale?
So it's probably more comment as to what they were wanting to have. Difficult question to answer.
Okay, so another question mark. Okay. Now the other question I have relates to this the printed motion, which has now had item 4 removed, and item 4 here has a blank. Replacement of the words genocide and genocidal acts with dash. Was there any community consultation about what this alternative wording was?
No, we haven't had any consultation.
This comes from Dick.
Except for Mr. Mayor, the groups, as we called it, loud minority or whoever they are, they complained about those words being used as divisive and not bringing community together. So I'm sure council is very capable of coming up with a word if they.
What's suggested is an alternative to the use of the word genocide, as in point 3. That's why the blank's there. And Councillor Dyer's already said she's had a look at the thesaurus, can't find anything. It's up to us whether we remove it, leave it, what?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a little bit difficult. I understand there's been consultation done on all sides, but as a council who's just seen emails flickering through, it's a little bit difficult to participate in a debate where there seems to be silences on both sides.
Can I?
Yeah, is it a question, Councillor Villa, because you've spoken?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to elaborate because I was at a meeting that Council, I don't think Councillor Lawrence was at, so just to contextualise.
Happy for you to add something?
Yeah, just to, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is the point 4, which the mover has asked to, is recommending to delete, consider the replacement of the word genocide and genocidal acts as a response to, as Mr. Dev said, when we had facilitated dialogue with two groups, I think there were 2 or 3 community groups who were strenuously opposed to the word genocide. And they were all in support of the monument, but they would like to remove the word genocide with peace, or basically they were just opposed to the word genocide. So my response is that, that point 4 is in response to to a very loud minority who were opposed to it. Whereas I think the motion that Councillor Greco has put up is just to keep it as is, with the original intention, and that
You're
is
actually debating the point.
Yeah, but I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Mayor, so that Councillor Lawrence is.
Look, I think we probably need to just look at the report in a little bit more detail. Bottom of page 83, top of page 84, where in response to this concern, officers met DEC, and it was agreed that the DEC undertake further consultation with Aboriginal community, and that's probably still happening. So it might be a bit premature to actually consider anything at this stage. Can we have a look at that comment? I think that's a very sensitive one that's been overlooked.
Can you repeat that, Mr. Miller?
Bottom of page 83, 84, where it says down there, the paragraph bottom of page 83, where it says that officers have met with DEC and DEC have agreed to undertake further consultation with the Aboriginal community. And it's still in the process of happening, so I think it might be a bit premature to actually consider any wording or any item at this stage.
Well, Mr Mayor, if that's the case, perhaps as you're alluding to, it may be timely for a deferral motion.
Well, we've actually got a mover and a seconder on this, so we'll deal with this substantive matter for the moment and then deal with anything different later on.
Can I just ask a question in relation to
Sure,
that point
Councillor.
before we, given that you've raised it? If we can just get some clarity in relation to whether the consultation with the Aboriginal community has any impact on the proposed words. If we can ask through you to the officers whether that's relevant to what's being proposed to be written or whether it's about inclusion of community in the project more generally. I'm just unclear where the consultation is actually relevant.
Mr Dev?
I need to refer that to Ms. Knox, but however I say the Aboriginal community have raised through our liaison officer that they have concerns or they wanted to get involved with the consultation. That's the reason that we have went back to the DEC and requested them to contact with the Aboriginal community and consult. I am not aware of the follow-up, Ms. Knox.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there has been some initial contact and engagement with the Aboriginal community, but that's not completed at this stage. That's why the point number 2 is there, reflecting the fact that we haven't completed the consultation.
So just on that, I just ask, given that the officer's recommendation had proposed words and a process forward, but that was not contingent on this consultation, I'm just not clear if one necessarily follows from the other. Whether the council can note the words or endorse the words, allow that consultation to be completed, and if there's issues, then it comes back to us.
Yes.
But what I understand is that there's a scope of works and other bits and pieces that need to be followed through, and I don't think we should be undermining the consultation, but we should also not be introducing elements which necessarily complicate the matter. So what I would ask, given that the officer's recommendation is actually to consider the words, to note the consultation, so on and so forth, we're staying with the spirit of the officer's recommendation, allowing that consultation to occur, but effectively not changing the words at this stage until that consultation. I would just make the point, Mr Mayor, I think it's actually wise for us to wait until that consultation has occurred before we would even consider other words, because it might be that the Aboriginal community says you should definitely stick with the word genocide. We don't know if that consultation is still underway.
So you're debating I ask a question because you're
I'm probably speaking in favour of the motion put forward, because I think the motion as listed basically says allow that consultation to occur, and everything else is just noting. The motion as listed on the screen there is essentially noting what's taking place. And we are not preempting that consultation by changing the words on the monument. That's not our role as council. And I don't think we should be jumping into this and taking the word genocide out when it might be, through that consultation, the Aboriginal community says something which we haven't thought of in this chamber. We should not be doing that.
That's right, good point.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. I'll take you as speaking for the motion.
I'll
take speakers now.
I'll move an amendment.
Can we hear an amendment to the motion on the screen? Councillor Lawrence.
Just that we delete item 3 and just replace it with that we note the broad community consultation process and the feedback that's occurred.
Is the mover happy with that?
Could you repeat that, Councillor Lawrence?
We note the broad consultation and the feedback that has occurred. A neutral.
Councillor Greco is mover.
Just leave it neutral.
Just neutral.
Yep.
Okay, so we see it on screen now. What's been done has been change that. Hear it again, Councillor Lawrence, for the benefit of the officers. Well, there's only one there now, so give us some time, please. Councillor Lawrence, on your feet, please.
Yes, that we note the broad consultation.
We're on the wrong.
We're on the wrong one.
We're on the wrong one, guys.
7.12 we're on. We've jumped an item. We could probably do it for a cafe at the moment. Coffee?
Glass of water.
Push it, Jerry. Push it, Jerry.
Simply note the broad consultation and the feedback that has occurred. first few words.
Just delete positive.
That's it, Councillor Lawrence, yes? On the screen, that's what you want?
Note the community consultation and the feedback that has occurred.
No, we don't want it, it's not positive.
Feedback. So question to you now, Councillor Lawrence, is that satisfactory with the mover?
I'm happy
and the
with
second,
that,
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Councillor Lawrence?
Yes, Mr Mayor. When are we getting to speak to this or not?
Well, I'm just concerned now that in light of the initial recommendation and the alternative here, now where is the word genocide left? Is it left off the agenda or not?
Yeah, talking about it.
It's not. We're not touching.
No, we're not touching
it. Okay.
It's genocide.
Okay. All right. Fine.
It's genocide.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Who's speaking?
You can.
Okay. Okay. I just moved that amendment because there obviously are different views, and at this point, I don't think we should prejudice our views on what people feel about certain words and certain acts. Now, I will say that I'd be far more comfortable with the original wording, which is around in honour of the victims of the crime of genocide, because I think that tightens it with the UN Convention.
Yes.
However, obviously it'll be up to further consultation, but I suppose I would say, coming from a family that has people on both sides of Pakistan and India, of the one religion but say on the wrong sides, there are very different experiences when they draw a bit of land, when they draw a line, and suddenly there's a conflict based on religion or ethnicity. So while some groups may be able to claim the word genocide in a civil war or a partition, there are other groups of the main group who suffer human rights abuses equal to those who can claim that. And so I'm sure we can have consultation about that with our community, and many who have come from civil wars, and people who are coming now from new civil wars, is that when communities come from civil wars, those who can't claim the technical Genocide Act still may be victims of human rights that they want commended. So there's another sort of conversation that needs to be had, but I think that needs to be had with our ethnic communities.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any further speakers? Councillor Walsh.
I'm going to speak against.
Speak on your feet.
Mr Mayor, I'm speaking against this. I abstained from this last time because to be honest, I thought it was opening a can of worms, and my only regret is that I didn't vote against it. And I think in some ways I was proven right. Look, I acknowledge the good work, the work of DEC here, and the good intentions that I have no doubt that DEC has in this. I have no doubt that the intentions are pure with this. But the fact is that we have seen over the correspondence from various communities that this monument has been fundamentally divisive. Fundamentally divisive. And, we mentioned, and Councillor Lawrence spoke about how different people have different views on different sides of conflict. And which illustrates the point that this monument has been divisive, and if the monument is divisive, the monument cannot stand.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Any further speakers? Councillor Seeders. Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm going to speak against. I appreciate from where Councillor Lawrence is coming from, but as councillors have highlighted in terms of the consultation that had occurred just in the twilight of my mayoralty, there had been some significant concerns raised in terms of the emotive aspects of it. Now, I don't think anyone here pretends to be arbiters in history as to where the application of the definition applies. Now, I think Councillor Valilla in that circumstance is fundamentally correct. It is not our business to rewrite the name of what has been proposed by another group external to council. That has been the issue that I think has been confused out in the public. It is not our public artwork. That is something that we must bear in mind. But, as Councillor Walsh correctly alludes to, it is the fact that referral must come back to council as to whether we allow the installation to go ahead. So we have an influence, if I can put it that way, in terms of moving the parties towards common agreement, which I understood as part of the consultation process which had occurred with both sides, to have let them in no doubt as to where the process lies. It lies with them in consultation with their officers, and if they are so willing to then come back through a briefing process from our officers that there has been some movement. Now, what we have here is no movement. If that is the case, then once it comes back to us, you know what happens? It is up to us as to whether we allow it to be installed or not. So I'll be waiting for that report, Mr Mayor, and that exactly is the state of play. But as far as that consideration is concerned, I will foreshadow in terms of my voting against tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Cetus. Any further speakers? If there's right to reply, no. I'm just wanting to see if there's anyone else who would like to it. Councillor Greco. No right reply because Councillor Lawrence has made an amendment to it. Unfortunately, I've just been advised, Councillor Greco.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm the actual mover.
Still the mover.
Councillor Lawrence doesn't have a right. I'm the mover, so I
don't have.
We actually did. We did the same before. We actually did the same before. Yeah. The same thing before.
But as the mover, I have the right to reply.
With respect, point of order. If the mover is still the mover of the motion, even as amended, he still has the right of reply.
Go, Councillor Greco.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think councillors have raised some very good points. I like that Councillor Cetus's point. Obviously, we can't. The wording is for the community to work out, and I actually particularly like Councillor Lawrence's point in relation to picking up further from the UN words about the crime. About the victims of crime, of genocide. I think what needs to be articulated when councillors are talking about this being a highly divisive issue, I think that can't be furthest from the truth, because the United Nations unanimously, no dissent whatsoever, approved this particular wording. That's mentioned there. So there's no dissent. Even excuse me, Councillor Walsh, I'm speaking. So there's no international dissent whatsoever in relation to the use of the word genocide. So I'm not sure why we're getting all into a knot about that. In relation to, I believe that therefore there's so overwhelming support for a particular monument of this type and things like that. Also, we have to understand that DEC is representative of a wide cross-section of community organisations, and both, I don't want to mention the array of organisations that are involved in DEC, but it's quite broad. And what we have is that, particularly in this situation, is two groups, small groups, who are not even totally representative of their own communities, objecting to a particular. So we have to take things on balance and not be swayed by a very vocal, as Councillor Valilla said, a very vocal minority that's trying to condition the overall debate. So I'm quite comfortable and I'm quite confident, as is the 7 billion people that are represented by the United Nations.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Okay, and I'll explain 29.23 right of reply in an email tomorrow to everyone. You've been very generous. I've been very generous tonight, Councillor Greco. If there's no further comments, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the motion on screen? Those against? That's carried. That's the new motion. You've abstained, it's fine. I saw 5 hands supporting it. That's all we need, the majority. Thank you.
Can I go to division? Core division?
Councillor Walsh has called for this. All those in favour of the motion, please stand. I name Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Lee, Councillor Villella, Councillor Greco, Councillor Lawrence. All those against, please stand. Councillor Walsh, Fontana and Councillor Sedis. And Councillor Williams has abstained, so that counts as a no. Next item of consideration, councillors, is 7.13. We have a mover by Councillor Villella and a seconder. Councillor Greco seconds. Councillor Villella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report on the Darebin Cafe Meals program that was launched this year during Seniors Week. And if councillors recall, it was a pilot program to look at a project whereby pensioners or HACS-eligible residents are able to enjoy a meal outside of their home as a way of supporting more engagement in the community. And it's just a sort of another creative option. And underpinned by an economic development perspective where we could draw on and engage our local businesses, the food premises in Darebin to benefit from this project. The pilot project was limited to Reservoir during Seniors Week because a lot of groundwork had already taken place with traders in the area, and it's seeing that the soft infrastructure was there and a good place to start. The report acknowledges that it's worth building on, that some of the reasons around why there weren't a significant number participating, then that is it was only available on Tuesdays, and that limited a lot of people's options, and that it was held in winter where it's more difficult to get out. But basically the feedback from those who participated was very positive. They really enjoyed it, and so the recommendation here, Mr. Mayor, is to broaden the project, which is really exciting, and roll it out over the following year, over the next year, and so you will get an ideal situation where it becomes all of Darebin. I think the key to its success is the great work that the officers are doing in educating the food traders, the small businesses, around the concept, around their benefit, and also the groundwork with that, the communication with the residents. I want to thank the officers for their energies and investment in this project. This is quite huge, and I think as it gets bigger, it will. And anyway, other councils are already doing it. So we can learn from them and they can learn from us. But certainly, Mr. Mayor, the state government is really looking at such projects because it is a way of dealing with our diverse ageing community and ensuring that they have a quality of life and remain engaged in the community. Thank you.
Councillor Greco,
very quickly, Mr. Mayor. Again, very positive report. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the pilot study has been instructive. I'm looking forward for the rollout. I think one of the critical issues here is building up a critical mass of traders and restaurants and cafes to come on board, because I think that would make that's what will actually make this project. Because this project is not just about providing for pensioners or low income. But it also provides an economic aspect to assist traders in servicing our ageing community in relation to giving them further options in relation to meals. So I think it's sort of one of those situations where it's a win for our traders and also a win for our community. This idea originated way back in the UK, and it's sort of found its way here in Australia, and many councils are taking this up. We're taking a slightly different angle on this, and I think that shows our innovation and our sense of trying something new. So I really look forward for the rollout of the project.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. There's no further comment from councillors. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item's carried. Next item of consideration is 714, legal and
Happy to
human rights issues.
move that, Mr. Mayor.
Moved Councillor Lee, seconded Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, thank you. And I do want to thank Councillor McCarthy for raising the GB item in the first place that brought this report back into the Council. As the report indicates, if you refer to page 93 through to 98 inclusive, people in the LGBTI community experience a number of systemic discriminations and human rights violations, if you call it, in our community. And many of them are well documented. There's an issue which in my previous professional life I've been very vocal about, which is the issue of spent convictions. In other words, while the issue of consensual sex between consenting adults of the same gender was decriminalised, the fact that they still carry the criminal history in itself, and that conviction is not spent, it's not wiped clean, and as a result, people convicted of those outdated laws or repealed laws were still subject to criminal history checks, only to find they have a criminal history, even though the statute has been repealed. So that's just one of many examples where people in the LGBTI community experience discrimination on an ongoing basis. The committee, which I've just chaired for the first time, was made up very committed and enthusiastic people within our community, and they're very excited about having Rowena Allen, the first Gender and Sexuality Commissioner of the Andrews government, to come and talk to the group, because it'll be a two-way dialogue for both the Commissioner to inform us of the work that she's doing, but also for us to present to the Commissioner some of the issues that we experience here in Darebin. So I welcome the report, and I look forward to the ongoing work of the Sex, Sexuality and Gender Diversity Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy, anything to add?
Look, just very quickly, Councillor Lee's covered it very well. I'd just like to draw Councillor's attention to one area, and Council is literally breaking new ground in terms of taking up the advocacy opportunity in this space, which is the issues affecting what might be considered a very small cohort in our community, but certainly a group of people who are highly affected when services fail to be inclusive, and that's, of course, people who are trans and also intersex, and they are some of the most discriminated against people in some respects in our community, because everything from the forms that we have in all of our bureaucratic processes through to the facilities we have as an organisation, and our very way of treating people can often be quite exclusive and in many cases discriminatory. However, Council has made huge leaps in this space in terms of looking at all of our services and facilities. There's a lot of work that we need to do in this space to be truly inclusive, and a big role modelling position for us to other councils to start working in this way. And I think we need to recognise that it's actually the partnership between the advisory committee that we have, who has representatives from these communities, and our officers, where the hard work is done. We just set the sort of the broad agenda and say go for it, but really that's where the hard work's done. And in state government documents, increasingly, and documents through the two local peak bodies, they are now referring to what's happening at Darebin as a leading light in this space in terms of this model of inclusion. So I think we need to recognise that what we're doing here is pushing the next level of the agenda, particularly in terms of people who are trans and intersex, and they are easily pushed aside by the bureaucratic processes that we have. We're saying no. We're going to look to do as well as we can in this space, and I'm really pleased with the advocacy that we're proposing here.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. There's no further comment. Councillor Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, I'm speaking because I want to speak against.
Speak against. Go for it.
I'm speaking against this, and look, I understand the report's good intent, and understand the issues of discrimination, and Councillor Lee recognised the issue of convictions, and Councillor Lee, thank you for mentioning that, and I do agree with that, but I have some issues with this because reading the report, it talked about the issue of of same-sex adoptions, but particularly the issue of religious freedom and that interaction there, and because I support as it is. I broadly support same-sex adoption, but I do support the exemption for religious groups, because the fact is that this, and this council, we pride ourselves on, on human rights, and things like freedom of tolerance and freedom of association. But the fact is, you can't have free speech.
Councillor Walsh.
You can't have free speech and freedom of association if you do not have freedom of religion. It also mentions...
Point of order, Mr Mayor, this is absolutely irrelevant.
Settle down, all of you.
Councillor Walsh, thank you.
Councillor Walsh.
Your time is terminated, thank you.
What, just because...
Councillor Walsh! Please, conscious of the time, we've still got 15 items to go tonight.
I'll just speak very quickly. I think Councillor Walsh's comments exemplifies the discrimination that the LGBTIQ community experiences on the
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Thank you. I'll put that to a vote now, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Core division.
Division. All those in favour? I name Councillor Lee, McCarthy, Williams, Cetus, Fontana, Lawrence, Greco, Villela. Those against? Councillor Walsh. Thank you. Next item for consideration, 7.15, the Junction Urban Master Plan. Councillor Lee.
Yes, I sent forward a couple of slight amendments,
Yes.
which I hope to have that.
They're on the screen, councillors. Secondly, Secondly, Councillor Cetus. Councillor Lee.
I assume the other councillors are okay with it as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank to our officers to produce all the report and the update on the implementation of the JUMP. As Council know, the Junction area is an area that's going through rapid urbanisation and rapid urban renewal. And it's pleasing to see the Council is investing heavily in the social infrastructure in that area. Councillor Walsh and I were at the pop-up park launch on Saturday morning at the corner of Alcoa Road and High Street, and there was overwhelming positive feedback from the community in these. Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Councillor Walsh, thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. And there was overwhelming positive community feedback regarding the investment that Council has committed itself to in terms of revitalising the Junction area. When I moved this general business item a couple of months back, the feedback I received precipitating to that general business item was that there was inadequate ongoing community consultation. And the purpose of the general business motion is essentially for Council to stay engaged with the community and stay engaged with the businesses to work together in partnership so we do deliver a junction renewal that's suitable to all needs in the community. So on that basis, I'm very pleased that this is happening. I do want to put forward that councillors from the cross municipality are involved in this as observers, because the hard work is done, just like in every other committee, between our residents and our officers. We're there to see and hear the concerns that generate from our stakeholders.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Cetus, anything to add?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, just to say that it's heartening to see so many expressions of interest for this. I do know Riley. But the point is, and this is in keeping with the spirit, just over a couple of weeks back with the changeover, that when it comes to these sorts of advisory committees, we don't need exclusivity here. I mean, we don't even, I would argue, even need this motion. Anyone can come along. But at least in terms of formalising the representation and the strength of our engagement, no better way to do so than to have a cross-section of councillors represented on it. And in that spirit, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Cetus. If there's no further speaker, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That item is carried.
No, unanimously, Mr Mayor.
Unanimous, councillors. Next item is 7.16, development at 1 Bench Street, Northcote. Councillor
I actually have a question, if I may, Mr Mayor, and it's only arisen to me just through the previous item that we dealt with in relation to this and the outcome of that. I'm just wanting to understand, in regard to page 116 and the request for advice about enforcement action, I'm just wanting to understand what Council's position is, firstly, in relation to having declared to sell this, whether Council can now undertake enforcement action in relation to the unauthorised occupation of the site and the levelling out, I think, of 3 stories below ground level.
Mr Dev, Mr Helmdall.
Interesting question.
Yeah, can I request you to repeat that question again? Confined to the enforcement?
Yes, so it's confined to the question of the enforcement element on page 116.
Yes.
And to understand what council's options are, given that council has resolved to sell that parcel of land to the applicant, can council now undertake enforcement action in relation to the unauthorised occupation and excavation of that land by the applicant?
Council can undertake the enforcement action under the Building Control Act and the Planning Act, any condition of breach. But in terms of ownership itself, I would assume that will go through the process of ownership of the land being transferred with that.
So I'll just, if I can just be clear, we have resolved to sell the land,
yes,
as per the previous items. However, there remains the outstanding item of the, I would argue it is illegal, occupation and excavation of that land by the same party, which is a separate matter to the sale. So there's no item for action in the recommendation. I'm wanting to know if that opportunity for action is available to council, given what has taken place.
No, it's we suspended the enforcement pending the council decision and conclusion of this process.
So the effect, if I can, through you, Mr. Mayor, is just in answer to Councillor McCarthy, a retrospective approval.
And we can probably get some information e-bulletin on Friday in relation to what we've just moved tonight, or do you want to include something straight away?
Mr. Hamilton. I would, if I can get some advice,
Through Mr. Mayor, I probably can't add anything legalistic, obviously I don't have a legal background, but I guess it would probably be prudent for council to consider the risks of undertaking that action from the development side, given that council has resolved to discontinue and do the sale process.
Yeah.
So I don't probably add anything in that.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow on that, I think it's instructive that, and it may well be your right in terms of a further briefing on this, if prior to that item having been executed a few moments ago was part of the negotiated settlement with them, then I would have thought that that would have been at the heart of the negotiations. So in essence, we have, in terms of the concerns noted by Councillor McCarthy, retrospectively approved the action by entering into negotiations to dispose of the land in question. I'm not sure whether...
No,
I sort of operate on that assumption.
No,
we'll see.
Lawrence, quickly. Yep.
Happy to move the motion.
Happy to
then
move
I will participate in the debate.
Councillor, I'm worried about Councillor McCarthy's question, which hasn't been addressed.
It still hasn't been addressed.
So
I'm
I just thought we might be preempting something here too.
We will look at those outstanding issues, pending on those issues as well. We will provide you, the council, a memo clarifying each of those items and how we are going to deal with that. Because sometimes some things might be illegal.
Let's get some
something
legal
might be penal,
comment first.
Monetary, but all of that we have to take into consideration.
Yeah, I don't wish to prolong this matter unnecessarily. I would just propose to whoever's moving it that a third point be added, that council receive a further briefing in relation to this matter.
Fine. Councillor Lawrence has
legal
moved.
advice regarding council.
Can you jot that down, please, Councillor?
I'll write those words.
Right.
Otherwise,
Councillor Lawrence has moved. Seconded. We have a seconder.
Councillor McCarthy should be the
I'll second it.
Seconded.
With those words.
Okay, let's see.
Just quickly, Mr. Mayor, obviously we're dealing with three issues here, although this motion deals with the traffic monitoring, the compliance of the traffic management processes. It's a big building, there's a lot of conflict with small streets, and obviously it's High Street as well, which gets very busy. So we've heard from residents around those. This report addresses that. As we've heard, there were also some issues about planning enforcement. We have gone through the land transfer issue in a previous motion, and while I'm very happy to get legal advice on planning breaches in the future, in a future report, that's good. One thing I'd say that is positive from this omnibus of motions on this tonight is that there isn't an intent for council to use that laneway for open space or any other purpose. The intent is that it can be incorporated to allow rejuvenation, urban renewal on High Street in this development. Number two, there will be a windfall, a dividend for traffic calming and other measures in the immediate area, which I think is a community bonus. And in this one, we're also going to the heart of the report around what has to happen in terms of traffic management, which I'm sure will be an ongoing issue. But in terms of enforcement, obviously I'll wait till the legal report comes back. From a basic area of a community representative and fairness, of course, there's no point being punitive unless there is a disbenefit for the community or other individuals. And in this case, we're going through a series of interactions on this site to try and stop the negative impacts on people. So I would obviously be advised by legalities on any planning breaches, but I would also caution councillors, this building isn't finished yet, and we reserve our right on every building to monitor the planning conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Lyons. Now, I know you're riding away previously, Councillor McCarthy.
I'll speak to this, and I'll speak to this reluctantly, but I appreciate the support for the third point, which I will read out again before we go to the vote. I also would point out that this is only noting where we are at the moment. The meeting that was requested in the notice of motion, which I submitted at a previous meeting, hasn't occurred yet, and I suppose I remain concerned about the transport management arrangements that we have in place at the moment. Because I think that they represent a significant burden with some 600 trucks travelling down streets that shouldn't have those trucks travelling down those streets. So there is issues there, and I don't feel that the residents in this case have had the meeting that has been requested, and I hope that occurs quickly. I do think it is really important, though, that we don't let the issue of enforcement go by the wayside simply because we have agreed to a sale of land. Because the message that I believe we might be sending to the development community is do what you like if you've got a process in train with council, because we'll wrap it up at the end. That's not how we do business. And I don't think we do retrospective approvals, and I don't think we should be doing retrospective approvals to correct others, in this case deeds that have compromised our own position, and in this case our own land. So I'm really concerned about this actually, and I do note that we hold a bond of $100,000. I'd like to think that we will not be relinquishing that bond until we have dealt with this matter, because otherwise we are doing a great disservice to our residents. And I think that we need to give confidence that we are going to use our planning powers and our enforcement powers, whether it costs us money through a legal process or not, to make sure that we are not creating a precedent for other developers. And I think that's the standout issue here. I take the points that have been made, but the fact of the matter is that the previous report, as far as I could read, did not absolve the applicant in relation to this matter.
Can you read it out, please?
The third point is receive a briefing and further report with council's options, including legal enforcement in relation to the unauthorised occupation and excavation of council land.
Councillor Lyons, okay, that's all clear. Councillor Seeders, did you want to speak?
Yes. Look, whilst I appreciate the comments made by Councillor McCarthy, the reality is that we've done this before, and councillors might recall a question that was posed from the gallery with respect to Helen Street that was subject to a retrospective approval, lamentable though it was. But the point here is about, I suppose, the exercise of discretion in some respects. We've received previous advice in relation to what it would cost us if we were to run to the Supreme Court on these matters, because sometimes these things need to be fleshed out. So I think some of the issues are separate, although there's a continuum of issues associated with it. I would hate to think that the traffic management issue is seen as some kind of belated proxy in what has been a long story associated with this development. The fact is, the quicker they can build it, the quicker they'll get out of the community's hair, and that's the reality. And I think what we need to be bearing in mind too, Mr Mayor, is I note that the residents in Ben Street had actually sent quite a positive email back to the council congratulating us in terms of our moves to try and put the developer on notice in terms of the standards that are required. I don't think there's been a circumstance in which we've received previous reports suggesting that they've breached them, notwithstanding, for instance, the right-of-way in question which we've dealt with. Now, I note that just even this afternoon, on my walk, on my exercise, that they had barricaded Ben Street. Access and egress from High Street is now blocked. Now, it will take some time.
the suggestion that it would have come from High Street would have required stakeholder engagement from, Garra Trams and whatnot. It would never have been supported with those wires there for the trams. It's just simply not safe. That is a singular message for us in relation to the way High Street will be treated and why, for instance, you cannot ask the developers to build solely in close proximity to those lines. I note, though, Century Towers next door, Mr Mayor, just to finish up, is building out on High Street, but that's because they're forced to, because they've got no other opportunities from the rear.
Thank you, Councillor Seacrest. Now, that item's gone to the minute taker there. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Last item from our reports is 7.17, the 2015-16 Couple of Works Program update, particularly to Southern Reserve, Pavilion project there. We have a recommendation. Councillor Lawrence has moved, seconded. Seconded. Councillor Cetus. Any comments there, Councillor Lawrence?
No, I think it's all covered in the report.
Councillor Cetus. If not, no comments from councillors. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes our reports for this evening. We have one notice of motion from Councillor Lawrence, 8.1, protecting our most vulnerable road users on St George's Road bike path. Councillor Lawrence, you'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Seconded. Councillor Cetus. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor. This issue has been raised, it occurred when I was Mayor in 2012-2013, around the Gladstone Avenue area where a very small child and with a collision with a bicycle, and at that point raised the issue about the agapanthus, the extra growth of them, the blocking of the view for both the parent, the child and the cyclist, just in there, which was fairly tight, and it's a fairly heavily used area. At the time, officers did investigate, and there was a range of vegetation control went in around there in terms of cutting back agapanthus and doing those sorts of things. There was then initiated, which took much longer, an entire safety audit. And the safety audit is 116 or 130 pages long, quite a lengthy document, and that looked at all the intersections, because we've got a range of complex intersections on St George's Road. We've got cars, many vehicle car crossovers. We've got formal pedestrian crossovers with tramways. We've got informal, casual, informal bitumised pedestrian crossovers. We've then actually got secret little rabbit runs, I call them, crossovers as well, which people use through the agapanthus. So there's a lot of people east-west. There's trams, cars, pedestrians, cyclists. And the pedestrians often, obviously, our most vulnerable road users or shared path users, especially very young and very elderly. And again, I think all of us will see the very elderly even crossing two lanes of traffic there often. So the report also anticipated the renewal of the pipes, and that is dotted through the report. It goes to the question of line of sight safety issue between the cyclists and pedestrians, so people have a chance to take reactive action. But the report, as lengthy and as wonderful and detailed as it is, with Vic Road's definitions of what an injury is, etc., does not actually go to what is required. Now, I've moved this motion based on my observations and interactions with a lot of different road users along there, that there is in fact, especially on the north side where it's coming down fast, there is sometimes 2 metres clearance, sometimes 5 metres. And often the first tree is at 5 metres. And what is really needed in a lot of those busy pedestrian interfaces, intersections, to reduce conflict and make it a safer place, is the removal of the first tree, especially on the north side of where the pedestrian crossovers. Now, given that all the trees are going to be removed, this won't cost us money. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. This will save money to make it safer.
Any further speakers to it?
Mr Mayor.
Seconder.
Seconder.
Yeah, look, just very briefly, I note just this afternoon, in response to Councillor Lee's email, a very interesting stat. Some 43 pedestrian collisions with cyclists in that stretch.
No. Point of order, that's incorrect.
Sorry? 2.
No.
What was the number?
2.
I saw a 40 plus number.
The majority is actually with cars.
Cars.
Sorry,
33 with cars.
Okay, my apologies. But that area has got, like Councillor Lawrence had mentioned, a lot of safety issues. I don't even think it's an ideal route for a cycle area, given the amount of crossovers going east-west on St George Road. I don't know how you treat that. It's just simply not just a question of the removal of the trees themselves. It's actually the route itself. It needs fundamental redesigning. I don't know how you get around that. Obviously, residents that would be affected would be from Beavers Road. There's a number of crossovers that connect from one end of High Street going down towards Mary Creek. I don't know how you rectify those issues. It's not simply just the removal of the trees. I would note that the design configuration has also been brought to my attention by the family associated with the boy that got injured. That needs to be treated. But I don't know, because at the end of the day, that's a Vic Roads concern. It's an advocacy position, perhaps with us. Now, not just simply with Melbourne Water. It's not just simply just putting in new pipes or whatnot. It's actually saying, is the current configuration of that roadway sufficient in order to cater for kind of reduction of numbers of cyclists that we're anticipating with a dual carriageway? I mean, this is the thing. If we value that north-south route, how do we make it safer for everyone concerned? The trees are one issue, but how about reducing the friction with cars and cyclists? I mean, just the junction at Arthurton Road has been raised in the context of kids traversing those sort of lights going to school. So how do you deal with the bus that traverses that going towards Blythe Street in Brunswick? How do you negotiate also with cyclists trying to traverse that? I've cycled down there, and I must admit, it is a bit of a worry to me. I do my best as a cyclist.
Thank you, Councillor Seeders.
I don't have my skills at negotiating all those different.
Councillor Villella.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to speak against it, merely because of a process. I would like to see a report, maybe coming to council to look at the issues here, because I must admit, you know, I can't visualise it. I'm not au fait with the ins and outs of all the different issues. So, you know, I think if there is an issue, a report would be the best place in the first instance, and then we'll see what the officers advise. But so, yeah, I think this is better suited as a report GB item. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villella. Councillor Lee.
Yes, I have a couple of amendments for the mover and the seconder, please.
Let's hear them, Councillor Lee.
The amendments are, in the first paragraph, to avoid future accident, full stop. So delete often with fast-moving bicycles, because I think stats shows it's not the case. So I think we need to be accurate in our description. So I'd like to remove, so to avoid future accidents, full stop. In the second paragraph.
That's the first paragraph.
That's
which
the first
line?
So it's full stop after avoid future accidents.
Yep.
Second last line.
And delete the rest.
Delete the rest, correct. So as to be factually correct. Secondly, substitute, in the second paragraph, delete, allow for at least 10-metre tree and plant-free zone, and substitute with the words consistent with the St George's Road Shared Path Safety Audit findings. So basically what we're saying is we're going to reiterate the safety audit findings to Melbourne Water instead of setting an arbitrary 10-metre zone.
Can I just have some clarity? Were you eradicating younger and older pedestrians from that sentence?
I'm happy to remove that, but I'm happy to include most vulnerable road users who are younger and older pedestrians, but I do want to remove the word often fast-moving bicycles, because that's factually incorrect.
Okay, so we've made some changes there. Councillor Lawrence, is that okay with you? Just conscious of the time. We still got a dozen items tonight, guys, and less than an hour to do them.
I'm just think we're trying to manage bicycles, so I need the word bicycles in there.
So you're not accepting that? Yes or no?
I can take with bicycles, often fast moving, you can take it.
No, that's not the intent. The intent, as we heard from our officers, is only 2 accidents out of 43 that involve bicycles and pedestrians. 2 out of 43. I don't think that justifies that.
No, we're not debating. I just want to know whether you accept it or not, because I'm really conscious of the time. We've got 10 to 12 items still to go through tonight, and we could have dealt it with this very quickly today or over the weekend, along with a lot of other items.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take out with often fast, because it can happen with slow-moving bicycles, but I think we need to state the problem.
Point of order, I'm the one that's proposing the amendment, not a counter-amendment.
So are you happy to accept what Councillor Lee has suggested be removed or not?
No, I'm not happy to accept that or the
Okay.
addition to the second point, because obviously I've read the report and it's ill-defined.
Thank you,
about
Councillor
line of
Lawrence.
sight.
I'll now put it to a debate then. Those speaking for or against?
I'll speak against them
Sarah.
in that case.
Sorry, are we debating the amendment or are we debating substantial motion?
He hasn't accepted it.
I believe I need a seconder for the amendment, so debate amendment first. So I need a seconder for debate amendment.
Second, let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the email has been circulated to all councillors this afternoon, there has been 43 accidents as identified by Councillor Cetas. Only 2 of those accidents involve bikes, 10 of those involve cars and pedestrians, and 31 of those accidents involve cars and bikes. So the issue is actually not the bikes. So I don't want to use the word emotive language in there, but we don't want to single out any particular party in this, because in an accident there are no winners in any of this. I generally support the direction of Councillor Lawrence's motion, because we do need to address the safety of shared path use along that path. But I don't want to single out any one particular party when the data does not actually support it. That's the key issue. The second point is we've actually done the safety audit. We have the consultant's report there, which the council has unanimously endorsed about the line of sight. What the report does not say is that it requires 10-metre line of sight. So I don't know where that 10-metre line of sight comes from. It seems rather arbitrary to me.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Any further debate on that? Councillor McCarthy,
as
briefly,
the
please.
seconder, let's not undermine the good work of our officers who have spent a lot of time on this report. This has been in place since 2013. We not only have a safety audit findings from the St George's Road Safety Audit Report, which Council spent a lot of money on, but we also have the Great Northern Bikeway Project, which picks up on exactly the issues that Councillor Cetas mentioned before about those crossing points. We actually need to be talking about getting the money for this project, because that requires a $10 million investment to upgrade that. We haven't seen a cent out of the state government. We need to get on the front foot and actually not be trying to completely fix this issue by a bit of Band-Aid stuff. We actually need the funding to actually deliver the project properly, which will deal with exactly what Councillor Cetas before pointed out, which is actually the crossing points with the cars. The Great Northern Bikeway Project, we launched it last year. It deals with exactly those issues by removing some of those crossing points and removing that conflict. So I think Councillor Lee's motion actually puts the officers back in their role as the experts, and it actually reinforces what we're trying to tackle here, which is a structural and design problem from the outset. It's all going to get ripped up. Let's do it properly based on the evidence.
Okay, if there's no further speakers, I'll put the
Right
reply. Go, Councillor Lawrence. I'm just conscious of the time.
I have not been able to talk about 10 metres. The trees are actually planted.
Sorry, Councillor. There's no reply. There's no. I apologise.
So
I've just been advised. There's not.
It's
not to an amendment.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to amendment.
They won't have the facts. So why did you match?
That's fine. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands.
Amendment.
Amendment.
You're
That's on screen.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah. Those against? Okay, that amendment is carried. That's
Call
now
for a division.
All those in favour of the amendment on screen, please stand. Those in favour, Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Williams, Councillor Villella, Councillor Gregor, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Fontana. Those against, please stand. Councillor Cetas, Councillor Lawrence. Thank you. Councillors, that concludes our notices of motion. We now
just point out, do we have to vote on the substantive, not the amendment? Yeah. Just procedurally, we've voted in the amendment, so now we've got to vote on the substantial.
Vote on the substantive motion. Yes, correct. Right. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. That concludes notices of motion, councillors. We now go to urgent business. Do we have any urgent business, Councillor? Sorry, Mr. Dev?
Yeah, there are 2 urgent business, both of them because of the big break we are going to have after this, it's become urgent.
We need a motion to move to accept these 2 items.
Both items to the agenda. Happy to move that.
Have a move, Councillor McCarthy, second Councillor Williams. All those in favour to accept those items? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Dev.
Yeah.
So I'll
just the first item is evaluation of the open air cinema pilot.
I'd like to move, but with an alternative motion which has been supplied to officers.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to declare conflict of interest based on indirect interest on my close association, family member owns property within 250 metres of the property, and
You can vacate the chamber.
Yes, I'll be vacating the chamber.
Oh, that's right, there's only one. There's only one, sorry. Okay, councillors, the report has been circulated already today, and we do have a motion on screen there.
With the amendment.
With an amendment.
This, for councillors' information, this is what was discussed at the briefing.
But we didn't see the first point, Councillor McCarthy, which invites procurement issues.
It's to cover off, it was officer advice to cover off.
I might seek some advice on that in relation to point one, Jacinta, the procurement issues in relation to that. How can be addressed?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is correct, that if council was to resolve additional screenings as per point 3, then council officers would need to undertake a procurement process to engage a screen hirer.
So that needs to be changed.
The timing of the procurement process may have some bearing on when the screenings might take place.
Hence the emphasis on early 2016 rather than specifying a month or a date. If I'm correct, just through you, Mr Mayor, just to gain clarity, the first one has already been kind of identified, but that doesn't trigger the procurement process. Anything else in early 2016 would require a procurement process if it is supported by council. Hence the note there to actually give our officers the opportunity to manage the procurement process within their own time frame.
Second it?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to our officers for typing up the amended words and also advice prior to this meeting to try to find a way forward that both maintains our commitment to this idea of holding some open air cinemas at Mayor Park, but also make sure that we tick all the right boxes, dot the I's, cross the T's, all those sorts of things, and wherever possible, really try to work collaboratively with the range of groups that are involved. And I just would draw council's attention to the first point, which sets them out: Friends of Mayor Park, Holy Trinity Cricket Club, Fiji Vic Cricket Club, Darabin United Soccer Club. I should mention that there is one missing, and I'd like to just add in there, which is Thornbury Women's Neighbourhood House, who played a significant role at the first event and certainly are eager to stay involved. So if we could just add those as well, because that was a critical thing. I'm really pleased that this report has come to us, because it gives us the opportunity to address some of the questions that come up when you have community-led events in open spaces, and certainly the opportunity for collaboration between different groups to pull off an event like this. The first event, which was a pilot, was highly successful. It attracted over 200 people. I didn't get the final number, but it was certainly over 200. And that was from very minimal publicity, because the groups were very concerned about letting it get too big. What we saw though, and I just wanted to share one of the things at the pilot which really impressed me, was seeing Thornbury Women's Neighbourhood House and the Fiji Cricket Club and the Darabin United Soccer Club getting together on the night when we were celebrating White Ribbon Week and talking about what they could do together to tackle family violence both not only in their clubs but in communities more generally. That's exactly what these sorts of events and projects are all about, is creating that opportunity for collaboration, getting groups that might have nothing else in common other than maybe using the same space to come together and explore what they can do together. But really critically, a great event, very successful, and a really great sense of community created on the night. And Councillor Walsh spoke at the opening of the first one and made that point. And I also said a couple of words just to thank people for coming along. But the critical thing, and I would encourage councillors, if this is successful, to come along and see what we're creating there, because I think it provides a model for every cluster of sporting groups and residents groups to come together and work in this way, with council as a partner, but not having to do all the work. There's a lot of volunteer work that went into the pilot, and what we have as a proposal here takes into account officer workloads, doesn't commit us to any particular month, but just says early 2016. There's flexibility there, and obviously with climate change, summers are getting longer, so there's a bit of flexibility, I think, in terms of time frame as well. I'll end it there,
Thank you.
and thank you to officers for all their work.
Councillor Walsh, seconded. Do you wish to add anything new?
No, not really. I'll just say, look, the only thing I'll say is that I think we found midway through with the briefing, and and Councillor McCarthy and I did have a chat and work some things through with officers before the meeting. So I think this is a good midway point. I mean, I think this is actually a good community event. I don't. Some have different views about it, but I don't share those views. What's fantastic about this is this group of people is so often residents and local residents and sporting groups are against each other, but here they're in Rockstead and they have such a good relationship, and so in that way we should be trying to harness this and promote something which is good for the local community.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. If there's no further speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Can we now welcome...
Noted unanimously, please.
Thank you. Can we now invite Councillor Lawrence to rejoin us, please? We have one more item as urgent business, Mr. Dev. That item is which...
Mr. Mayor, it's about commencement of statutory process for leasing of a stadium to Australian Skate Company for the purpose of ice rink.
Okay. That item was circulated, councillors. The time is now 10 to 10. We've got 40 minutes to cover 9 items. Do we have any questions there? We've had that explained to us during dinner. Happy to briefing.
Happy to move it.
Move Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Villela. Councillor...
look, there's nothing to really add. It's pretty self-explanatory. Great that we're moving ahead.
Thank you very much. It's taken a long time to get there. Councillor Villela, nothing to add. If there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. As there is no more further urgent business, we'll now go to general business. Councillors, and there's one carryover from a fortnight ago. We have the one from Councillor Villela, which should appear on screen, the promoting and supporting of all female candidates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's very straightforward that officers
Seconded Councillor Williams, but there's a little section missing there.
Because I want to put in a...
Can you stand up, Councillor Williams, if you want to add something?
Yes, I have a slight amendment.
What is it?
Just to add in where that break is, Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, okay.
Yep, of course.
Yep, go ahead,
thank you, Councillor Williams. So it's pretty straightforward. I think when this has been circulated, it's just to get ways that we can commit to the VLGA's Go Women campaign to get more women to run for local government elections in 2016, and that we should, consultation is to be done with us women councillors, Women's Advisory Committee and the Darebin Advisory Committee on different ways that we can support this campaign, including a series of workshops.
Could I also propose...
Councillor, let Councillor Walsh, let Councillor Villela finish, please.
Second.
Yeah, we have had preliminary discussions at the Women's Advisory Committee about some workshops that are Darebin specific, and that went down really well. So, so we look forward to some more ideas. Yes,
Councillor Walsh.
Could you also include the Disability Advisory Committee?
Mover, happy with that? Yes.
Yes, sure.
And I'm sure the second is happy with that too. Okay. Councillor
Look,
Lee.
it might be easier just say, look, relevant
Stakeholders.
advisory committees, because you can think about all the other committees as well.
Well,
so.
I think,
Look,
I think my intention, I don't want to preempt, the ability to participate in any of the workshops will be open to all.
Yes.
It might be...
Vulnerable communities.
Yeah, that's right. So
I think we'll leave it as is. We'll leave it as is, okay?
I think just leave it as
Councillors,
it is.
can we actually send these through earlier in the day, please, so we can be aware of it? Okay, Councillor Williams, anything further to add?
Yes. Look, the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee actually had 2 workshops going back a few years back, and one of them was just specially for Indigenous women. It's really important that we do consult with the Darebin Advisory Committee to include those Indigenous women. This is actually more than just a local impact, but it's an actual region and possibly a statewide awareness program to encourage and support women participation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. If there's no further debate or comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Councillor Villala, you have another item, the Cheddar Road median strip?
Yes, this is pretty straightforward too.
Happy to second.
Seconded, Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. This is in relation to the Cheddar Road median strip. As you know, this was when I think Councillor Lawrence was Mayor at the time, and we initiated discussions with Melbourne Water to establish a relationship in which we could actually negotiate some greening and planting of that particular strip. Now, initially the answer was just a flat rejection, no, but then we sent a letter and the officers persevered, and we have got a modest planting of trees on Cheddar Road. Now, I know in my discussion with officers that there were plans for grander things. I've seen the plans, but I know that what we were able to plant was limited by a limited budget. So I think it might be there's an opportunity for the 2016-2017 budget process to get a report from officers to look at the next stage, the next stage of a tree planting project along that strip, and also maybe look at community planting days. So basically what we get is a report, Mr Mayor, that shows the full potential of what we can do in that space with Melbourne Water consent and costings, and then it's up to council to decide, whether to invest in it or not, or whether it's a 2-stage process. But just to get, if you like, a definitive plan, so that we know what we can do. I know that the tree planting to date has gone down really well. Residents in that area really do look to that space for further beautification. It is getting used more and more with just families walking across and people cycling, and I think that space is, if we're committed to greening, beautifying Reservoir, the northern part, that's a critical spot. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
Mr Mayor, just quickly.
Something new and briefly, please.
Yes, new and briefly. While we have got some good trees on the east side of that area, the main west side of it is denuded. It is incredibly frustrating to come back to Melbourne Water's restrictive practices and restrictive negotiations. I went with a couple of Punjabis and we planted 2 acres of trees some years ago, and they're all 20 foot high now, and we're still talking about this. We could have got in and just done it on a weekend with
Guerrilla
some
gardening.
up there. Seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, that item is carried. No more items from Councillor Villala. The next item up is general business from Councillor Greco, the home maintenance program item, which was circulated today. 10.3.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just very quickly, I won't take up much time. Look, the item is self-explanatory. I've had a number of pensioners approach me about the council ceasing the service in relation to home maintenance program, particularly in relation to window cleaning and gutter cleaning. It's a service that council provided to pensioners and concession card holders in our city for quite a number of years, and the program, as a result of an operational decision by council, that the service has been removed. The other thing too is that I believe that the service was removed without much consultation because the elderly citizens that approached me that were trying to claim the service for this year were quite surprised when they called the council and that they were told that the service had been removed. What this motion basically does is that it talks about, it recognises the value of that service, and let's understand, councillors, that these types of services were introduced by the City of Darebin, or the Darebin City Council subsidises these services as a way of helping vulnerable people to stay at home, as a way of maintaining their houses, so that therefore they could stay at home and not necessarily have to leave their home because they're not able to maintain the proper upkeep of their home. It both applies to, my understanding applies to pensioners, but also applies to people who face disabilities. So it's an important service. It's a service that traditionally has been offered by the City of Darebin, and to cease this service, and again, I acknowledge that if the service was ceased as a result of an operational decision, I think we need to, as a council, perhaps revisit.
Councillor Greco, I think it wasn't operational. I think it had to do with external funding, and that was circulated to all councillors. So we need to correct the terms. I think it's very important.
Yep. Okay. If I can just finish. And therefore, what this motion does is that basically is for council to receive a report on options to reinstate the service, and that the report should make reference to why the service.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. We've read it. Okay.
Yeah, if I can finish, Mr. Mayor, I've just got time because I want to make some additional points. And
you're over time, Councillor Greco. I can't allow that, Councillor Greco. I can't. You're over time. Yeah. I'm conscious of that, please, and I'm also conscious of the comments that in relation to this, that we've actually had to stop it because of a ceasing of funding.
No problem.
And all people were notified. We've received briefing papers in the past in relation to this, and they were resent again today.
Mr. Mayor, there's a motion.
Thank you. I understand. I understand.
You're debating the motion, so
I understand. I'm actually correcting your comments, which are inaccurate. The second, wish to add anything to it, Councillor Bella?
No, it's nothing further to add.
If there's no further comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the item? Those against? That's carried. That item is moved. Certainly. Those in favour, please stand. Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Williams, Councillor Villela, Councillor Greco. Are you standing or sitting, Councillor Walsh? You're standing, Councillor Walsh.
Standing.
You want
I was away from some debate, so I'm going to abstain.
Those against, please stand. Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Fontana. Councillor Walsh, please make up your mind beforehand. You've abstained. You're sitting up and down. It's very confusing.
Mr. Mayor, if I can use a procedural motion to extend the meeting by half an hour.
We've got till 10:30. We have to go to 10:30 now, is that right?
No, it's not been endorsed. That hasn't been changed.
We still need to move the motion.
Moved Councillor McCarthy, moved second Councillor Lee. All those in favour? That's carried. Okay, we have more GBs to discuss tonight. 10.4, general funding for school and community fundraising opportunities aligned with the Darebin Council elections. Councillor McCarthy.
Second that.
Second Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an item which councillors would have seen this afternoon. Essentially, we have an interesting opportunity before us, which is to make a decision next year about how we hold our council elections. That's a decision of the council about what method we use. The opportunity that we have next year is to see, and this has already been explored in other municipalities where they have this system of attendance versus postal, is to see whether there is opportunities for our schools who, like last year when they had a lot of advance notice of when the state election was going to hold, they were able to actually program in fundraising activities such as fetes, all those sorts of things. Some schools have raised a lot of money through that process, unlike the federal election, which will most likely happen next year, where they only get a few weeks' notice, about 31 days. So this is about looking at our options available to us. It does apparently cost us a bit more to hold elections in that way. However, the side effect is that we can create a great opportunity for local schools and community groups. So it's about analysing the cost and benefit ratio on this sort of stuff. So proposing that we get a report back in February at this stage and see if we can look at a shift in the process. And of course, this would be a decision of the council about which method we use based on the information we get back to us.
Thank you, Councillor.
So that's all.
Question?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, we're actually meeting with the VSC at the end of February. if we wanted to do any sort of costings to come back to council with, that might be better for a March report.
March.
Sorry, this would just come to us in February about the. So the VEC will give us costings in February, will they?
Well, we're meeting with them at the end of February, so.
March.
Yep.
March, is that okay?
So just that's fine. If this could come back as part of that report, is that right?
After the consultation.
After we've met.
After the consultation with the VEC, yeah. But I think the point, and I just draw council's attention, is the consultation with schools and community groups regarding this. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Report in March.
Yeah,
Okay.
report in March.
I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of that item? That's carried.
Have that noted as unanimous, please, Mr. Mayor.
Unanimous for the minute takers, please. Last item, general business, 10.5, contracts and investments inconsistent with council values and objectives.
I'll move that.
Second.
Move Councillor McCarthy, second Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy?
Just very quickly, councillors might have already started receiving emails. I've received a couple from residents who are obviously members of Get Up and other groups. There's a national campaign asking councils to look at whether they have contracts with the two companies that run the detention centres, the offshore detention centres, and asking councils to consider not actually having contracts with those companies, being Wilson Security and Broad Spectrum, which is formerly Transfield. So this is simply a report on whether we have any contracts. This will give us an answer that we can give to our community, yes or no. At the moment, it's very difficult to answer those emails, but if we have a report back, we can say yes or no, and then it's up to council if we want to make a decision in relation to any other course of action. So it doesn't preempt any decision, but it certainly gives us an answer on that front. And of course, the other option here is about whether there are other contracts that we want to look at that are not aligned with our current policies in those areas as outlined. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's get a report in February if that's enough time. Happy to receive it in March if that gives officers more time. Conscious of but there's also 2 meetings in February as well. So.
Okay. Councillor Lee? Nothing. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That item's carried. That concludes our general business items, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, I did submit a general business item.
Is that right?
Late last night.
Yeah, he did. That's right. I remember that. Oh yeah, where's that gone?
I was surprised it hadn't been brought up yet. So
I beg your pardon.
I did send it to all councillors.
I do recall seeing it.
I sent it to the officers and also to our CEO. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember seeing it.
Refresh our memory, please, Councillor Lee. I do apologise.
Develop a master plan for Road Baden Gardens and any referrals to 2016-17 budget and fast track of works, basically. Yes.
Councillors, remember seeing that?
Yep.
Yes.
Happy with the content? Have a seconder. Councillor Cetus, you wish to speak? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. I do apologise, Councillor Lee.
No, that's okay. I'm just glad it's resolved.
Thank you, councillors. That concludes general business items. We do have item 11, a report by mayors and councillors. We have that for noting. Councillor Cetus is noted. Councillor Williams is seconded. All those in favour? That's carried. And I do assume all reports are coming.
Confidential.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Motion to move in camera.
A motion by Councillor Cetus to move in camera, seconded by Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Thank you. We're moving. Thank you, members of the gallery. We need to move into camera for confidential matters, so I'll need to vacate